Welcome back, everybody. We'll just be watching Cartoon Universe and the explanation
Least its craziest episode yet. This one
for season, for episode, which one? I think this is from episode 6 for season 2.
Focusing mostly on Fizzarolli and Osmodius, but also including a handful of cool side characters, as well as giving us the revelation of what tragedy really drove this wedge between
from episode 6 to episode 7 in season 2.
Blitz and Fizz so long ago. We got spoilers ahead, so go watch the episode if you haven't already, because we're going to break it all down. Now, this was the craziest episode yet to me. Normally, I reserve that kind of statement for the finales, premieres, and big events, but this is sort of a mid-season finale marking the end of the first half of Season 2, with the next half not premiering until probably the end of this year. So it makes sense that this would be a pretty big episode. And it actually combined a lot of the new elements that were introduced from one episode to the next this season into a really interesting climax. The show is famous for introducing iconic side characters and giving them their own little focus about once a season so far, but after introducing Moxie's father Crimson this season and bringing Stryker back once already, the two returned in this big episode that, with Fizzarolli and Osmodius being involved, really felt like a giant crossover of the characters. The episode opened with Fizzarolli and Osmodius waking up and starting their day in the Lust Ring, reminding us of what we learned about them in episode 7 of season 1, which is that they are a lovey-dovey couple pretending to only be interested in each other sexually because it would be considered scandalous if they don't. Fizzarolli seems more worried about Osmodius' image than Osmodius himself, and asks to take his trip to the Greed Ring alone so that they won't get caught cuddling again like they did in episode 7. From this, we learn that while Fizzarolli is a business partner with Osmodius, he's primarily known as the brand of Mammon, the embodiment of greed and the ruler of the Greed Ring. Mammon is said to appear in the next episode, with it also being heavily Fizzarolli focused. But for now, all we really know is that he is a clown-themed royal demon who is known for having a much more dangerous ring than Osmodius at the very least. When Fizzarolli goes there, he of course trips into Blitz, and they literally get roped into an adventure together when Stryker abducts them with his lasso to prove to Crimson he would be a valuable assassin. Crimson is a powerful figure in the Greed Ring, and I believe he has hired Stryker to kill Moxie, something foreshadowed at the end of his previous episode. This was a wild way for so many different characters to come together, and I'm excited to see the show continue to explore how these different iconic characters will bounce off of each other. Crimson holds Fizzarolli and Blitz hostage, trying to force Osmodius to sign over as much power as possible to Crimson in exchange for Fizzarolli's life. At this time, Osmodius is meeting with Stolas, who has come to ask for an Osmodian crystal. Stolas confirms here that succubus with their Osmodian crystals are the only species in Hell with large-scale access to Earth, with it being a bit rare for one of those crystals to make it to the black market for someone like Barbie Wire to use for drug trades up on Earth, explaining why Blitz couldn't go just buy one himself. Osmodius makes it clear he could give a crystal to Stolas if he wants to, which probably wouldn't even be illegal, as Blitz does have a business license and operates in a building that seems to tailor specifically to demons with portal access to Earth. However, Osmodius knows Fizzarolli hates Blitz, so refuses. Stolas, however, tries to make himself useful to Osmodius by reading the contracts being presented to him and looking for traps. As a royal sin, Osmodius' contracts would be extremely binding, and once he gets Fizzarolli back, he may magically not be able to undo the deal, or even have Crimson killed, as his safety may be magically assured by the deal. Blitz and Fizzarolli are able to escape on their own, of course, but the real meat of the episode came down to their interactions, conversations, and the dramatic reveal of how they went from seemingly best friends as children to being so angry with each other as adults. Now, before we got the dramatic reveal and the inevitable emotional moments that followed, Fizz and Blitz actually got a chance to bond with each other over where they currently are in life. It was foreshadowed that Blitz did something to ruin the lives of many people, particularly Fizzarolli. But since then, Fizzarolli has actually become even more famous than he was at Blitz's family circus. While he was definitely the star of the show there, he's now one of the most famous figures in all of Hell, being pushed into the spotlight not just by one, but two royal rulers of the Rings of Hell. And as Fizzarolli makes really clear, he is in love with Osmodius, and feels like Osmodius understands him in a way no one else does. We saw this beautifully displayed in their morning routine, where even when Fizzarolli is being his most obnoxious, Asmodeus only acts mildly annoyed and really just indulges Fizzarolli's behavior. In many ways, it is like the dynamic of Blitz and Stolas, where Blitz feels the need to act like his worst self because he needs to prove to himself that Stolas will still keep chasing him. However, in this conversation with Fizz, Blitz presents his issue entirely backwards. The way he tells it to Fizzarolli, Stolas doesn't really like him, and is just another rich privileged jerk who wants to slum it with Blitz. Blitz claims that Stolas overwhelms him with affection and attention as part of an act, but Fizz is able to explain from his own experience with Asmodeus that this is real affection. And on some level, Blitz knows this. He just can't acknowledge it because he needs Stolas to go out of his way and beyond this to prove it to him. Blitz needs to know he's loved by having someone keep doing this no matter how naive Blitz plays to the situation, because he can't admit to himself that someone like Stolas actually cares and won't just abandon him later. The experience Fizzarolli conveys to Stolas in this conversation is part of the process Blitz is going through to accept that Stolas does in fact truly appreciate him, and that it will be safe for Blitz to treat Stolas in a similar way. Their conversation is presented entirely as insults and bragging and telling each other what is what, but by the end of it, they have a framework to understand each other as being in similar situations. Because of this, when Blitz and Fizzarolli finally talk about their fallout, they are able to find a place of understanding with each other instead of digging deeper into trying to insult each other. Through flashbacks and conversation, it is explained that Fizz and Blitz were great friends for much of their young life. But from Fizzarolli's perspective, Blitz always seemed jealous of Fizz's attention in the spotlight, something we even saw back in episode 1 of this season. The tragic event that separated Fizz and Blitz happened on Fizzarolli's birthday over 15 years ago, which was being celebrated by the family circus, where Blitz's father Buxo is seen giving Fizzarolli a card that says, "I wish you were my son." In the season premiere, we saw that Buxo prized Fizzarolli above Blitz, loaning out Blitz to royals and giving him dangerous missions while there to steal from them. It would make sense that he saw Fizzarolli as the son he wished he had, and from Fizz's perspective, that would make Blitz very jealous. The last thing Fizz saw was Blitz looking angry that Fizz got the card from his father, before the tent suddenly catching on fire. This, to Fizzarolli, looked like a purposeful attempt to ruin Fizz and destroy his career so that Blitz could be the big star of the circus. The fire caused an explosion when it reached some fireworks, and Fizzarolli lost his horns, would get covered in scars, and burnt his limbs beyond repair. This explains why his jester hat flows so freely when he bounces around, as his horns are nearly broken down to his skull. His skin is nearly pure white from the burns, with a little red spot on his backside as we saw when he woke up in the morning, and the red spot on his nose being saved only because he was ironically wearing a red clown nose when the explosion happened. His limbs burnt beyond repair would lead him to getting robotic enhancements, and thus he went from a normal looking imp to the jester-themed imp we know today. The last thing Fizz remembered after the explosion was Blitz running away while Fizz burnt to death. This was a tragic revelation that went a lot deeper than I expected. It's been a popular theory for a while now that a fire at the circus caused Fizzarolli to lose his limbs, and it's something that was foreshadowed back in episode 2 when RoboFizz was burned in a very similar pattern to how Blitz got his own scar over his eye, which this episode revealed was also caused by the explosion. The addition of Buxo giving Fizzarolli that card, wishing Fizzarolli was his son, added such a layer to the tragedy that Fizz lived with for the last 15 years, but according to Blitz, that wasn't the entire story. Blitz revealed to Fizz that this particular time was very hard for him, and that he was trying to get help. He never says exactly why that time was hard or what help he needed, but it leaves open another mystery to extend off of this one, giving us a lot of answers that were satisfying while leaving something left to explore. That night, Blitz had no intention of hurting Blitz, but instead was actually holding a love letter based on the heart it had on it, with a note saying, "For Fizz's eyes only." Whatever else Blitz was dealing with, he was planning to reveal his feelings for Fizz that night, but after seeing what happened with his father and his card, it pushed Blitz over the edge and he instead went to go cry. He simply pushed a guy out of the way who was carrying a happy birthday cake for Fizz, which ended up making the tent catch fire, which eventually got to some dangerous fireworks. This led to an interestingly green fire, such as the one we saw at Lululand, that episode once again foreshadowing this big reveal. Of course, along with Fizzaroli, Blitz indicates that he lost his mother in that accident as well, with a photo of her with Blitz and Barbie burning with green fire. Blitz said that Fizz was the only person he had left, because even though his sister survived, she didn't want to see Blitz anymore. Blitz claims that some people told Blitz that Fizz didn't want to see Blitz, and Fizz reveals that no one told him that Blitz even wanted to see him. I imagine this is a situation similar to what we saw in the episode where Blitz sneaks into the rehab facility to try and see Barbie Wire. They did their best to keep Blitz out and really insisted on him leaving her alone. I imagine after the accident, Blitz may have tried to see Fizz in a similar way, perhaps at a hospital, but was told he was not wanted there. Now, this didn't repair their relationship in the traditional sense, but they were able to forgive each other for what happened and everything that's happened since. At the end of the day, Fizzaroli got everything he could have dreamed for as an imp in hell, and without the explosion, none of that would have happened, including being with the love of his life. More than anything, this gave Fizz closure, as the one loose end from his previous life was that he thought his best friend wanted to hurt him. And now that Fizzaroli knows that it is an accident, he is able to let go of that and simply enjoy his new life. The episode ended with a similar explosion to the one at the circus while the two made their escape, and this time Blitz didn't run away, but instead rescued Fizzaroli. When Fizz returned to Osmodius, this made him tell Osmodius to give Blitz the Osmodian Crystal, which means going forward, Blitz won't need the Grimoire. This is the perfect place to end the first half of Season 2, finally following up on what it promised in the premiere, with Blitz being able to return the Grimoire and no longer being bound to Stolas with their monthly arrangements. And who knows how their relationship might develop from there. But what do you think? Let me know your thoughts on the new episode in the comments down below, as well as any theories, topics, or other videos you want me to... Major spoilers ahead if you haven't seen Season 2, Episode 6 of Helluva Boss. The most recent episode of Helluva Boss gave us a lot of confirmations on what happened between Blitz and Fizzaroli, but one thing it didn't quite explain was why Blitz seemingly abandoned Fizzaroli at the moment he needed Blitz the most. Now, recently, there was a major leak of the recent episode in its earlier animatic form, without proper sound, let alone animation. I didn't see it until someone told me that there was a deleted scene that didn't make it into this episode, one supposedly involving Barbie Wire. Now, this shouldn't really be a spoiler for anything, what with what we did see in the episode, and I think instead they tried to convey what was going on in this deleted scene with the burning photo that we saw at the end of the flashback, but this deleted scene really ties it together. Fans had been theorizing for a while now about what made Fizz and Blitz fall apart, as they were presented as great friends in the childhood flashbacks of Season 2, Episode 1. This episode confirmed that it was a tragic accident at the family circus that caused their falling out, as well as giving Blitz his trademark scar over his eye and damaging Fizzaroli's horns, limbs, skin, and maybe even his vocal cords, explaining his Beetlejuicy voice. The craziest thing in all of this was that in Fizzaroli's flashback, Blitz seemingly abandoned him when Fizz was clawing his way out of the flames. This episode didn't give an exact explanation of what happened here, but in the early storyboards that got leaked, we can see that Blitz specifically saw his sister running out of a burning tent, and it was shortly after that we see Blitz running after her. While Blitz may have slightly seen Fizzaroli for a second, he was covering his eye, which itself had received quite the burn from the fire that he caused. From Blitz's perspective, it would seem that he didn't even see Fizz, and even if he did for a split second, the original story was that Blitz saw his sister and was running after her. I don't think this was removed to be a dramatic reveal later, so it's not really a spoiler, but rather the burning photo we see at the end of the flashback tells us that he ran to see what happened to his sister and mother. Blitz was probably worried about Fizzaroli after what happened, but the moment he realized his sister and perhaps his mother were in danger, that would be the only thing on his mind.
Yeah,
While we can't hear what Blitz is saying in his flashback, the way his mouth moves, it almost definitely seems like he's saying the word mom. So whether or not he saw his sister canonically in the show or just in this storyboard, his mind was definitely on his family. In short, Blitz didn't abandon Fizzaroli at all, and instead only left for very positive reasons without actually seeing Fizzaroli, to go save his twin sister and the woman who gave birth to him. Unfortunately, however, Blitz's mother did not seem to survive, and while this burning photo doesn't prove she is dead 100%, it's a very blunt confirmation overall, what with Barbie Wire refusing to talk to Blitz and Blitz wearing his mother's skull necklace around his neck. It is possible that their father Buxo is out there and still alive, but it's likely that he died in the fire too. If not, Buxo seems to have had a similar reaction to Blitz as Barbie Wire, wanting nothing to do with him. Blitz may actually blame his father for the fire more than anything because of how careless Buxo was about his relationship with Blitz and how blatant he was about wishing Fizzarolli was his son, what with his birthday card he gave him on the night of the accident. Fizzarolli would go on to have even more fame as the jester boy toy of the Sin of Lust Osmodeus, and this episode really made it seem like the explosion was ultimately for the best as far as Fizzarolli's life can go. I had originally theorized that he and Osmodeus might break up because of Blitz's interference in their life and Fizz's more romantic relationship with Osmodeus becoming public. But the end of the episode made it clear that Osmodeus legitimately doesn't care about how people view him, and he doesn't really want to hide his relationship with Fizzarolli any more than he has to. While this makes the explosion an ultimate net good in Fizzarolli's life, and really what led to his happy ending, the same cannot be said for Blitz's sister Barbie Wire. We've yet to see any flashbacks with Barbie Wire, especially not with this animatic scene of her running away being removed. But we know from Veroska's joke about rehab in episode 3 of season 1 that Barbie Wire was considered somewhat famous. I doubt Barbie Wire was ever as famous as Veroska is as a pop star, what with Barbie Wire only working at a family circus, but it implies that she was doing really well with her career before becoming a washed-up addict. While it seems like a very easy connection that losing her job and mother would make Barbie Wire turn to drugs to cope, the real problem seemed to be the way Blitz was trying to interact with her following the accident. Because of Blitz's carelessness, Barbie Wire lost everything. She may not have had the physical trauma that Fizzarolli experienced, but between a level of fame recognized by Veroska and her own mother, Barbie Wire was left with very little to appreciate about life because of her twin brother. Blitz's response to this horrible accident that he caused was to cling to Barbie, to try and insist that they be as close as possible since they have no one else now. But for Barbie, that was more of a burden than if she would have lost Blitz in that fire as well. While she may understand that what Blitz did was a tragic accident, she still wouldn't be able to get over how much she had lost because of him. She may have even tried at first to be there for him, perhaps out of necessity as they tried to get new jobs and places to live and relied on each other, but it eventually turned her to a pharmacy's worth of different substances that she would abuse. It is because of Blitz's pushing into her life that she would have become an addict, and she probably didn't realize it was his fault for a long time. Barbie may have been in and out of different addiction centers, or she may have slowly just escalated until she had to go to the one Blitz broke into so that he could try and talk to her. In that particular scene, he is stopped by a nurse with a taser, with the implication that this sort of thing has happened before. While in rehab, Barbie Wire seems to actually have gotten clean, which I imagine is pretty rare in hell. She even seems to have stayed clean as she got out, surprising Blitz by her supposed sobriety while working in a job smuggling drugs from Earth. It would seem that, while there, Barbie learned the only reason she needed these things to cope was because of Blitz, the extreme pressure of dealing with Blitz and his neediness specifically. Without him there, she was able to process what had happened to her and how her life had changed. Now that she's on the outside of rehab, all she really wants to do is live a simple life, doing what she thinks of as honest work by hell standards. She left rehab without telling Blitz, and in fact seemed to leave a request not to let Blitz find out where she is. This nurse at the rehab center didn't tell Blitz what little she did because she wanted to betray Barbie Wire's trust, but because she thought it was actually the best way to give Barbie Wire the result she wanted, which was to be left alone. Yeah. By explaining that she's got a job and just wants to be left alone, she hoped Blitz would really take the hint and stay away from her. Of course, that isn't what happened though, and Blitz ended up ruining Barbie Wire's life just a little bit more by getting accidentally involved in her drug business when a sinner calls out a hit on her supplier. And even after that, Barbie seems to just want to distance herself from Blitz so she can stay healthy. And while it was surprising and nice to see Fizz and Osmodeus seemingly become closer to Blitz and Stolas instead of joining the many people who want to kill them, I think Barbie Wire is closer to hating Blitz than truly forgiving him. While Fizz was able to move on once he realized that what happened to him was an accident because of the great status he had been elevated to, Barbie Wire has been screwed over by Blitz yet again, and she will probably have more conflict with him in the future. One thing Blitz mentioned in his conversation with Fizzarolli was that he was going through a very hard time in his life before that accident happened. While Fizz felt that Blitz was always jealous of the success he had at the circus, Blitz seemed to be far less successful than his sister as well, and his entire career may have been propped up by his sister's success in particular.
Damn.
While Blitz probably provided little to her act, the draw of spectacular performing twins probably helped bring people in, who were ultimately won over by her performance and not Blitz's. This left open something of a mystery for us to explore as we go into the second half of Season 2. We know precisely what Blitz did and what happened because of it, but now we get to slowly dig deeper into his childhood and his relationship with his sister specifically to see what he was going through and what he was trying to get help for. But what do you guys think? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. In the most recent episode of Helluva Boss, Crimson referred to Asmodeus as the weakest and most non-threatening of the 7 deadly sins.
Yeah,
While this was at least partially just trying to insult Asmodeus, a lot of fans wondered what this meant for a sort of power hierarchy among them, so I'm going to break it all down. Now, the popular theory for the hierarchy of the 7 princes is that the most powerful are at the top and the weakest are at the bottom. This would put Lucifer at the top as the ruler of the Pride Ring, and who is indeed confirmed to be the most powerful being in all of Hell. At the bottom would be Belphegor, the ruler of the Sloth Ring, and then 2 steps above that would be Asmodeus, the ruler of the Lust Ring. Other theories persist that only the upper 3 rulers are particularly powerful, those being Lucifer, Satan, and Beelzebub, as they are traditionally known to be part of a sort of unholy trinity against God. Now, Asmodeus may be literally the physically weakest sin, but that would be surprising considering that Asmodeus is not just the ruler of the Lust Ring, but is also a king in the Ars Goetia. He holds 2 titles of royalty. In addition to this, Asmodeus seems to have one of the highest quality of living for his people. Beelzebub has extravagant parties that some hellhounds can come to, and a seemingly nice wilderness for them to run around in, but we mostly see hellhounds being treated as servants or even slaves everywhere else. And I doubt the locals here are living very nice lives considering the state of pounds and the massive amount of hellhounds that are orphans. In Wrath, the imps basically live to farm and fight in war. In Pride, you're trapped under the thumb of the overlords. Greed is so dangerous that even Asmodeus is afraid to send Fizzarolli there. While the Envy Ring is implied to be nice, and the Sloth Ring seems luxurious, the Lust Ring is among one of the best places to live, it would seem, and while the Sloth Ring is nice, as I said, it comes with the huge addiction issues its locals clearly have to pharmaceutical pills. Lust is a place where you are essentially born to be a sex worker, and there is a lot of deeper issues there if we choose to dissect the show from an overly serious angle. But at the end of the day, the succubus do seem to enjoy being sexual, even if their system isn't the ideal way for them to indulge in it on a personal level. The luxury the succubus have in Hell seems largely due to not just Asmodeus insisting on his lifestyle, but the succubus and incubus being rather supportive of his vision. In many ways, they get to be elites, and the succubus, who are naturally less interested in sex work, probably find other jobs within the Lust Ring to simply help support the overall infrastructure, while the ones who are interested in it can go on to be big celebrities like Verosika. The same way that some imps fight in war and others simply farm, there are always different ways to support the ring.
Cool.
With all that in mind, you'd think Asmodeus would be rather powerful, but I think instead he's traded a lot of the power he naturally wields in order to create this particular infrastructure that fits his idea of an erotic lifestyle and that can support his entire community of succubus. We see in the episode that Asmodeus has factories where he creates erotic toys, something we can't really show explicitly here even if censored in the show. It was explained in episode 2 of season 1 that the Robo-Fizzes were made in Big Ozzy's factory, but in this episode, Asmodeus explained that Fizz himself is part of Mammon's overall brand, Mammon also being a jester-looking demon. Even outside of Mammon, Asmodeus seems very reliant on the other rings for his ring's survival. While rings like Wrath provide something necessary for all of Hell with its food production, what Asmodeus offers from his factories is simply mass-produced luxury items, which a lot of the poor masses of Hell shouldn't be able to regularly afford. The more Fizzarolli and Verosika and other Lust Ring celebrities can be loaned out and perform for others, the more those princes can benefit, and Asmodeus only ends up getting a fraction of what the princes get out of it. Otherwise, hiring Fizz would only cost Mammon money, and as the Prince of Greed, that is the last thing he would want. He would have no reason to hire him. All of this is to say that Asmodeus has probably signed a lot of contracts like the one presented to him in this episode, without ever really looking them over. He probably signed away a lot of power in shares and profits and such in deals that ultimately made the Lust Ring able to thrive, but in a way that doesn't give Asmodeus any leverage over anybody else, much less the other princes. Demonic deals seem to be an important part of the power structure of Hell, and any deal Asmodeus makes as a royal is considered exceptionally binding, as was explained in this recent episode. So over time, Asmodeus seems to have sold a lot of his power and potential power so that he could focus more on his Ring of Hell being the kind of place he wants to live. And at the end of the day, he is very happy. He may not have more power than Mammon, but he lives in a beautiful home with the demon he loves, surrounded by an obedient entourage, and every night he just goes out and has fun. During the day, he gets a lot of time with Fizz, who is also his business partner, and even when Fizz isn't there, Asmodeus seems genuinely happy to just use his time and resources to expand the science of erotic technology. But it seems that he could potentially be weaker than a lot of the other royals, not just the ones in the rings above, but perhaps the ones below as well. Below Lust is the Envy and Sloth rings, ruled by Leviathan and Belphegor respectively. The medical industry and its addictive prescriptions are both much more necessary in Hell as far as industries go, and with that alone, I imagine Belphegor has a lot more leverage over Asmodeus. In terms of power, Belphegor is known for being lazy, however, as the ruler of Sloth, and industry may be the only thing Belphegor has over Asmodeus, but we can't say for sure. Leviathan, however, I imagine to be phenomenally powerful, with most fans linking this royal to the more primordial chaos demons of the Lovecraftian nature. The Envy ring that Leviathan rules is theorized to be more upper class than most rings as well. With Leviathan being a sea monster in biblical lore, my current theory is that it is a ring that is isolated because it is one large ocean, making it hard to access for most of the other species. Even the sea-based demons of the Greed Ring Ocean, like the Loan Sharks, may have trouble getting there, as the society of the Envy demons may be in the dark depths of the bottom of their ocean, where others simply cannot withstand the pressure, even if they can breathe underwater. The isolation and perhaps ancient primordial power that Leviathan has probably led to Envy being a nicer ring, where its exclusivity was particularly interesting to the other demons of Hell. The Envy app on Blitz's phone gives the impression that Leviathan is working with Vox and Velvet to control social media, where I theorize the Envy demons are able to show off their lives in the Envy ring that are otherwise impossible for the demons of other rings to witness. Unlike Asmodeus, however, Leviathan seems to have been able to create this lifestyle without there being some massive expense to his people, the way that succubus largely have to be sex workers to support the industry in the Lust Ring. And because of that, I think Leviathan may just genuinely be a more powerful figure than Asmodeus, and perhaps a lot of the others as well. Beelzebub I believe to be more powerful than Asmodeus in terms of pure strength, but like Asmodeus, a lot of her power seems to have been traded simply to create a lifestyle that she enjoys. At the end of the day, I believe just in terms of raw power though, she is probably stronger than Asmodeus with her beast mode, but we really can't say for sure. Finally, there is Satan, who is primarily focused on strength, and I cannot imagine him being less powerful than any of the other royals, besides of course Lucifer. So we can't really say for sure, but the only prince I see Asmodeus as being more powerful than is Belphegor, but even that is iffy. Crimson's remark about Asmodeus being the weakest of sins, however, was largely just about where Asmodeus had built himself up with his lifestyle and infrastructure. Between his business dealings and falling in love with Fizz, he set himself up for failure, and like Stolas, he could face repercussions for having his relationship go public. All of this made Crimson feel very safe, as it made Asmodeus the weakest prince in terms of who Crimson could take advantage of, though it may not have really meant anything about his overall power level when compared to other princes in various other ways. But what do you guys think? And why do you think that? And isn't thinking a little difficult after 8 minutes of talking about a cartoon? Let me know how hard you think in the comments down below, and I'll see you next time. Warning, this video will get into some pretty dark theories regarding the things Blitz was forced to do by his father Buxo, but please keep in mind it's all hypothetical. The most recent episode of Helluva Boss had Blitz insisting to Fizzaroli that there is no way a royal demon could ever really love a low-class imp, and that Asmodeus and Stolas are both just faking any interest in the two of them. This really got me wondering why Blitz is so trapped in his mindset, and after some disturbing moments from his childhood earlier this season, it got me thinking this arrangement with Stolas may not be the first time that Blitz was caught up with a royal romantically, and he may have even had his heart broken before. My name is Imcut, hit that subscribe button, and let's dive into it. So for a while now, Blitz has been acting like Stolas can't possibly have any real feelings for him. From the very beginning, Blitz showed distance from Stolas, which was an odd behavior considering he tries to force other people to be as close to him as possible. Stolas is a rare exception to this rule, with Blitz trying to push Stolas away as hard as possible instead of invading his personal space the way he does with Moxie and Millie. Part of this does seem to be the psychology of Blitz being unable to rationalize that someone so elite is in love with him. Despite dating stars like Veroska in the past, Blitz feels like no one really wants him. That is why he has to be so pushy and clingy with his employees. But because Stolas actually wants Blitz, Blitz needs to use that as an opportunity to prove to himself just how much Stolas loves him. Blitz has a lot of reasons, I believe, to push away Stolas, but I've said in the past, at least part of it is simply wanting Stolas to keep pursuing Blitz anyways. The moment Blitz starts enjoying the attention and returning it to Stolas, he fears that Stolas will stop, and perhaps even start giving that attention to another imp now that Blitz is on the hook. Because of that, the only way for Blitz to ever feel safe is to never admit that he knows that Stolas likes him. The longer Blitz can do that, the longer the relationship can last, and if Stolas simply gives up along the way, Blitz can walk away with the rationalization that he was proven right by Stolas giving up. But what is it that built Blitz up to think this way? While dating Veroska, it is possible that Blitz developed this mindset. He has his scar in these photos with her, which means it was after his horrible circus accident and after he had stopped chasing fame, it seems. Veroska was an elite in many ways who could have made Blitz feel used and abused, explaining why he would eventually abandon her in a motel and steal her car. But that behavior itself implies that Blitz had been through something like this already and was already feeling like Veroska could never take him seriously. This is shocking because Veroska got a tattoo of Blitz's name on her arm, which she crossed out instead of removing. So it seems like early on, Veroska may have been more like Stolas than the bully we see her as now. She may have been loving and doting and giving Blitz everything she could to keep him around, and in episode 7 of season 1, she seemed genuinely hurt by how Blitz had abandoned her. This really implies to me that Blitz had his trauma built up from some previous relationship or relationships, and the rant Blitz went on in this most recent episode makes it sound like it was a true royal demon. But how and why would this have happened? This is where the theory gets a little dark, but after going back and watching Season 2, Episode 1, I think that Blitz may have met some other royal demon similarly to the way he met Stolas. In Stolas' childhood flashbacks, we see that his father Paimon took him to the circus where Blitz worked, where Stolas would immediately fall in love with Blitz. Being a spoiled royal, Stolas was able to get Blitz to be his friend for the day, something Buxo easily agreed to in order to make more money. While Buxo accepted very little from Paimon to take Blitz for the day, Blitz was told to rob the Goetia house for everything they could, and it looks like they were rather successful. Well, this seems to be the first time that Blitz was made to do this based off of the guilt-tripping Buxo had to do. It sets a very dark precedent for the rest of Blitz's life at the circus. Stolas' interest in Blitz was rather innocent at the end of the day. They were both children, Stolas had a childhood crush, and Paimon used his money to make a playdate happen in a sketchy, inorganic way. Considering that Fizzarolli was a jester at his circus who now is a performing jester at sexy nightclubs with robotic love bots being made modeled after him, I don't think it's a stretch that some level of escorting was probably involved at Buxo's circus. This isn't even unheard of throughout our real history, where different types of performers from theater to circuses reel audiences in with a show and then allow people from the audience to purchase an evening with one of their performers. Considering where Fizzarolli ended up going and how sexualized the entertainment industry is in hell, with succubus like Veroska being pop stars and Angel Dust as a gay adult film star being one of the biggest celebrities in hell, I really don't think it's a stretch that many of the circus members here were essentially escorts as well. In the world of hell, this is kind of common really, but what makes it dark is the pattern we might be seeing of it in the first instance with Blitz being made to spend the day with Stolas by his father Buxo. Since then, Blitz has been proven to attract elites more than the average imp, and I think it's setting us up to learn that Blitz has a long history of sleeping with and perhaps even dating in the upper classes. And I think it's possible that at an older age, but before the tragic accident, Blitz actually got into something of a situationship with a royal blue blood specifically, as he refers to them in the latest episode. This would be someone who came to one of his shows, took an interest in him, and managed to get some sort of ongoing situation where Blitz genuinely felt loved and appreciated for a while. Whoever this mysterious royal was, Blitz may have returned their affections early on, only to realize that this was just something of an act or a routine this elite does when seducing demons, before eventually getting bored and moving on. While Stolas seems genuine in his interest to Blitz, Blitz may have his judgment clouded by some previous royal elite, making Blitz feel like nothing but a rough tumble with the lower classes. Now, in the world of Helluva Boss, there are a lot of royals, with there being 7 sins ruling over each of the rings of hell. But I think it's more likely for this plot that one of the 72 royal Goetia demons would be brought in for this. Just in the background alone, we've seen a lot of cool Goetia demons at parties and in a cafe that could be very fun to explore in this kind of plot. But I think it's actually possible that this reveal is being saved for a demon we actually know pretty well already, Stella's brother, Andrealphus. Andrealphus is a marquis in the Ars Goetia, lower in rank than Stolas, who is a prince, but someone Stella still uses as a threat against Stolas. Though lower in rank, Andrealphus may be doing much better with his duties than Stolas, who seems to be tired of them based on his disinterest in the constellations and the morning Blitz is scoping out his mansion to steal the grimoire. While Stella was happy to have Stolas assassinated, Andrealphus is more cunning and seems to be planning to inherit the fortune of Stolas by killing his daughter first so she can't inherit anything, then killing Stolas. Andrealphus would be the perfect royal to reveal as a sort of ex of Blitz because of the drama it would cause, and also because Blitz would get to see the genuine differences between Andrealphus and Stolas and how they treat everyone around them. Blitz probably couldn't imagine Stolas doing something as heinous as trying to kill a young girl like Octavia to inherit a fortune. And as they go on this big adventure together, Blitz will see that Stolas is genuine when he appreciates him. Something we especially know is true because even when Blitz isn't paying attention, Stolas is still just enamored with Blitz and the way he naturally is, such as in the Hollywood episode when Blitz saves Stolas. This would explain why Blitz didn't take Veroska so seriously despite the very serious affection that she showed him. He saw himself as just her bodyguard that she wanted to have some fun with, and not someone that would just be there till the end when he dies, as he discussed with Luna in episode 8 of season 1. And that mindset would be carried into this arrangement with Stolas, where Blitz can list off all the things Stolas does to show he cares and has interests, but Blitz has to tell himself that it's all an act, because it's all something he experienced before with Andrealphus, or some other royal demon. But what do you guys think? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and I'll see you next time. We've seen almost every ring of hell now, with the only exception being the Envy ring. And with that in mind, and some lines from Asmodeus in the most recent episode, I think we can safely say that the Greed ring is probably the most dangerous ring to live, or even visit. So let's talk about why. Now, Greed is the 4th ring down, making it the very middle ring of hell, and while hell is imagined as a place of torment, at least some of the rings actually provide a pretty decent lifestyle for their people. Of course, most any ring is going to have a division between an upper and lower class, and the sharper the division is between those two classes, the harder it is to live in that ring overall as a common folk. The Greed ring is perhaps the greatest example of that, such as seen in Season 2, Episode 3, when the IMP gang goes to visit Moxie's father. Previously, we had only seen the Greed ring through the lens of Lululand, which looked like a rather nice part of the Greed ring overall, but this was of course to cater to tourists that wealth could be extracted from and doesn't really reflect the reality of life in the Greed ring for the people that live there. By flying beyond Lululand, we were able to see that the majority of Greed is just slums being exploited and destroyed for the sole purpose of profit. This is the Greed ring, so of course there is a focus on wealth, with the ruler of this ring being the demon clown known as Mammon. While we haven't seen Mammon on screen, we can learn a lot about his goals by the way he treats his own ring and the other princes. Mammon loves money so much that his face is printed on Hell's currency, called souls, and his goal seems to be to get as much of it as he can instead of letting it circulate among his people. Without proper circulation, the system collapses, and the money is worth nothing even to the massively wealthy. But the point of greed is that it's a deadly sin so corrupting that greedy people can't see beyond the rush that they get from knowing that they have more money. It's like an addiction. Some people are so greedy that the money itself becomes symbolic, and the more of it they get, the more happy they are because they know the literal resources it could buy are no longer available for the common folk when that system collapses. To do this, Mammon wants to exploit not just his own ring, but the other rings around him as much as he can. Since it's easier to exploit his own ring, however, it has quickly fallen apart to look worse than any other ring of hell so far. To help with his plan, Mammon has created essentially two classes, the upper class, which is largely made up of loan sharks, and the lower class, which appears to be largely made up of imps. Now, Mammon shouldn't be above exploiting his own population, and likely does in many ways. The loan sharks seem to live a great life in nice communities for now, but once they can't exploit the lower classes of the greed ring, they will be thrown away by Mammon as he seeks refuge, likely in another ring, leaving greed to rot. These loan sharks appear to give out loans to the lower classes of the greed ring and perhaps the other rings in hell as well. High interest loans are probably more legal in the greed ring, but even in there, I imagine that the economy is purposely worsened by Mammon, so the lower classes are forced to take out illegal high interest loans with his mob sharks. Mammon likely controls most of the industries we see in greed, which appears to be polluting the skies and water with its factories. I imagine greed is where most things are mass-produced for hell, greed being a cheap place to get cheap goods, but making it so Mammon owns the market for these goods and thus gets most of the money. He would likely offer very little pay for these jobs that the lower classes would feel forced to take without any other options, while getting paid so little that they still have to take out those high-interest loans just to get by. Now, to extract as much wealth out of the greed ring as possible, Mammon first had to flood the greed ring with some of his own wealth to create the infrastructure and factories and provide jobs for the people. But to get even more money out of them, he would keep the pay so low that they would have no choice but to take out those high-interest loans, keeping them in debt to him and spending as much of their lives as possible trying to find more work that they can do and more ways to save money so it can go right back to Mammon. He creates a system where the only option from birth is to take a job that doesn't actually pay you enough to exist, and by the end of your life, you have paid Mammon back so much that you've made virtually nothing being his worker for decades. These lower classes appear to be largely made up of imps in the greed ring, imps being one of the few species we see in almost every ring of hell as locals, with differences arising between imps from different rings. It is believed they are largely from Wrath in origin, but migrated throughout hell early on and evolved to have those differences from the imps of other rings over time. Mammon thus saw them as an easy class to exploit within his own ring, while giving the local species of loan sharks preferential treatment. However, not all imps are stuck in this lower class, as we see with Moxie's own father Crimson living among the elites, surrounded mostly by loan sharks. In addition to Crimson, I think a few other species have elites in the upper classes of the greed ring as well, each doing what Crimson seems to do, exploiting their own people on behalf of the loan sharks. These loan sharks have likely developed a reputation for being shady mob and mafia types that you can't possibly actually pay back. And while desperation can make demons sign all sorts of contracts, as we've seen in the most recent episode, many likely learn not to trust the sharks over time. With that in mind, the sharks would have opened up their inner circle to include imps like Crimson who they could control, and who could do business in his community on behalf of the loan sharks. Still being shady, but at least being more relatable to the imps as an imp himself. The system that Mammon created here has led to greed being perhaps the most corrupt ring of them all. To make his dirty dealings work, there is a lack of policing in this ring, with imps being murdered in broad daylight as the IMP gang flies by in episode 3 of season 2. In the most recent episode, Fizzarelli had a rehearsal with Mammon scheduled in the greed ring, but Asmodeus was afraid to send him even to that on his own. He recognized that even on the way there, Fizzarelli could easily be kidnapped, with one of the cities in greed literally being named Ransom, apparently because people are known for being kidnapped and held for ransom there. The lack of policing allows Mammon to do his dirty dealings, but it also allows others to get away with their own crimes too, as long as those crimes don't interfere with the crimes of Mammon. Now, in terms of crime and general lifestyle, greed seems to be the worst, though wrath would definitely be a close second. There, death seems pretty common, but it's less because of oppression and more because of the natural way of life of Wrathring imps. While I imagine a good many die in war missions that they are forced to do for the overlords, they do seem to actually love war itself, and are just as likely to kill each other in events like the Pain Games, considering Millie and Sally Mae's high scores. While they don't seem to love the fire tornadoes that have taken away previous ranch hands either, all of these things are just what the imps naturally evolved around. While they are born to be soldiers and farmers at the bottom rung of hell, the imps in the greed ring below them are perhaps just one step below them, considering they are being essentially farmed by Mammon to be pushed to their own destruction. The Wrath Imps have a purpose that will essentially never end, and they seem to enjoy the farming they do, what with having to wrestle around with the bigger demonic animals. So overall, I think that the Greed Ring is definitely more dangerous than the Wrath Ring in terms of the people living there and what they actually want out of life. Now, as far as class system goes, I say that the Pride Ring is probably the most similar to Greed. Here, we have more of a focus on the Overlords of Hell, who are long-living immortals that can spend decades and centuries creating their own industry that they absolutely rule. This leads to a sharp division between the upper and lower classes. However, the never-ending life of the sinners makes the class division more about a never-ending relationship of trying to house the lower classes in a way that makes the Overlords profitable. The entertainment of the Greed Ring, Lululand, seemed largely aimed at tourists and not its locals, with there being little to do or enjoy for the Greed Ring natives but work. In Hell, Greed is almost like a lesser developed nation that focuses on factory production and only has nice areas where tourists are let in, whereas Pride is more the typical American system. This system is still based on milking people for as much as you can, but more so based on their vices than their actual labor. In the Greed Ring, Overlords want you hooked on drugs, watching TV, movies, and adult films, scrolling on social media, and that sort of thing. All of this is meant to keep you entertained no matter how terrible your quality of life is. In the Greed Ring, those would just distract you from the possibility of more work, and allowing people to have the money to pay for such things with his factory wages would mean less money that Mammon can immediately extract back from them with industries that he'd locally control, from property to food distribution. As such, the Pride Ring is similar to Greed overall, but Greed still seems far worse in that it's focused on robbing people of all potential joy before destroying you, whereas the Pride Ring is an indefinite prison where the hope is to simply get you addicted to as many vices as they can. We see very little of gluttony in the show, and what we do see in episode 8 of season 1 is mostly luxurious. However, this is the party of Beelzebub herself, where everything has to be perfect to maintain her mood. From the flashbacks of Luna at the Pound in episode 2 of season 2, I would imagine most of gluttony is a pretty sad place to live. If it was better than living in Imp City, I think Luna would have run off there as soon as she turned 18, but sharing a one-bedroom apartment with Blitz and not even having enough money for her own car seems easier than whatever natural life exists for her there. Lust overall seems like a pretty nice place to live for locals, and the Sloth Ring, despite its drug issues, seems to be the most luxurious in all of Hell. Finally, the Envy Ring has not been seen by us, but it is implied to be more of an isolated suburban ring based off of the deep-sea Karen we saw at the hospital with Blitz in episode 4 of season 2. With that in mind, these three seem to be perhaps the highest quality of living overall in Hell, putting them not just above Greed, but perhaps even Pride, and especially above Wrath. But what do you think? I'm enjoying doing these little videos where I explore why one ring of Hell is the most dangerous or the most luxurious, so let me know which ring you'd like to hear compared to the others and from what angle, and we'll do some exploring on Hell's world building in that way. See you guys next time. This most recent episode brought us back to the Lust Ring in Helluva Boss, and with what we saw, it gives the impression that the Lust Ring is perhaps one of the nicest places to live in Hell. Now, this is Hell, as I just said, so we generally think of it as a place of torture, but at this point in Helluva Boss specifically, things have kind of changed. In Has-Been Hotel's development, what we now think of as the Pride Ring seems to have been the singular location for Hell, with the other 6 rings being made for Helluva Boss to give it new territory to explore. This would leave the story of the Overlords and their enslavement of the sinners in the Pride Ring as something saved for Has-Been Hotel. Now, to replace those Overlords as big side characters to explore in Helluva Boss, we got the 7 princes and the secondary nobility of the Ars Goetia, with some of these figures having similar symbolism to the Overlords. One example is the Prince of the Envy Ring, Leviathan. We know very little of this ring, but it seems to be a place that the other species of Hell and the other 6 rings seem to very much envy, with the deep sea demon we saw in episode 4 of season 2 giving the impression it's a very elitist suburban lifestyle living there. On Blitz's phone, we also see that Envy has their hands in social media, with an app called NV that looks a lot like TikTok. This is an industry reliant on the Overlord Sinner known as Vox, because he's the one that brought in screen technology to Hell, with his fellow Overlord Velvet being the one who brought Hell into the age of social media. Similarly, Osmodius is the Prince of the Lust Ring, and pushes a lustful lifestyle onto his people and Hell as a whole, similar to the third member of Vox's Overlord team, Valentino. However, these two can ultimately explore very different types of lust, with Asmodeus being rooted in more old-school ideas of lust, and Valentino being primarily about adult films. Valentino is one of the primary antagonists of Hazbin Hotel, using one of the lead characters, Angel, as the star of his adult films. However, as Vivziepop develops her story for Helluva Boss, some of the royals would become less evil than fans originally imagined. Stolas and Asmodeus are both royal demons, but at the end of the day, the story we are focusing on is their romances with lower-class demons. Stolas is presented as more endearing than Blitz, who is our proxy for a commoner in hell, but for that to work, we have to like Stolas and Asmodeus as people overall. With that in mind, there are limits to how evil these characters can be. It's fine for them to be evil in the vague sense if the goals are beyond their depth. Asmodeus is a high-ranking demon in hell with his 2 elite titles in the Seven Princes and the Ars Goetia, but the plans to conquer Earth seem far beyond him, and in fact, his primary interest is just making better and better erotic toys and adult clubs for other demons to enjoy. Asmodeus is presented as a playboy noble who doesn't necessarily want to stop the evil plans of the other royals, but even if he wanted to, he couldn't. Instead, we judge him based more on how he treats the people around him, which is Fizzaroli, his ring, and other royals. Asmodeus, of course, treats Fizzaroli like he is the greatest thing to ever happen. He made Fizzaroli a partner in life as well as a business partner, and helps to manage Fizzaroli's own career as part of the brand for Mammon, the Prince of the Greed Ring. He treats Fizzaroli delicately, and overall, he seems to treat other people in this ring very similarly. While he isn't afraid to get angry at someone to make sure they stay in line, he is even rather courteous with imps like Moxie and Millie, simply yelling at them to leave his club after actually physically assaulting Fizzaroli. With that in mind, I think Asmodeus generally wants what is best for his population, which is of course largely made up of succubus and incubus. These demons are known from real-life myth to prey sexually on humans. In the show, they have bat-like qualities such as with their wings, and give the impression that they evolved as sort of sexual vampires. I believe that deep in the past of hell, they were likely wild animals that were able to use their powers to lure in other species as prey, with them having hypnotizing powers of a sexual nature. Over time, and perhaps with the help of Asmodeus guiding their evolution, they would become the more humanoid sexy seducers we see in the show. Now, sexuality is always a complex topic, but for this discussion, I think it's important to recognize that this is extremely fantasy, and while there may be some internal politics to the issues of how sex work as an industry affects the entire population of the Lust Ring, the show is presenting the succubus and incubus as having a natural interest in this lifestyle. With the imps of the Wrath Ring, there is a natural interest in violence and death, and this is not seen as offensive. But since sexuality is such a touchy subject, I want to make sure everyone understands that this is not a discussion about reality, but about a fantasy land where sexy demons have turned their entire civilization into a nightclub district. It allows for absurdity where Asmodeus can have large, elaborate factories where he spends all of his time weighing in on the development of erotic toys, instead of doing anything a royal with 2 titles should actually be doing with his time. So the world we're exploring here in Helluva Boss is not meant to be commentary on a real society, nor is it my commentary on society. It's just a silly fantasy land that exists largely to make Asmodeus seem silly, so that people can appreciate his silly relationship with his silly gay clown. With that in mind, this is what life seems to be like for the common folk in the Lust Ring. The Lust Ring is the 5th ring down with a dark blue sky, giving the impression that it is always late at night there. Additionally, it is always raining in the Lust Ring, which I have theorized to actually be the leaking ocean of the Greed Ring above it. This atmosphere makes the whole ring feel like the inside of a dark cave, explaining why the bat-like succubus evolved there. With their wings, they likely could fly to other rings during their night to prey on the demons there, returning to the Lust Ring like one giant cave they call home during the day. In the present, this atmosphere makes it the perfect place for others to come visit for nightlife. With it constantly feeling like night, visitors will always want to go explore, and there will likely be 24-hour clubs and events. With their wings, and already being adapted to the weather, succubus could travel around the ring with ease, enjoying the dark atmosphere along the way. When not in a party district, the dark sky likely leads to a very relaxing downtime, with people easily being able to transition out of party mode once back at their residence or motel and the quiet, dark night atmosphere surrounds them. During the proper day hours that the other rings experience, Asmodeus would conduct his general business, and the various operations such as his factories would hold their work hours. While succubus and incubus generally seem to enjoy sexuality, those that don't seem to have ample opportunity for happy employment at one of the factories. Outside of this, there would of course also be the regular infrastructure that exists outside of the lust industries, typically shops and such that would still require workers for those who had no interest in the sex industry at all. So at the end of the day, while the lust ring is very lust-themed, Osmodeus seems to have built a system that relies largely on consent. In the most recent episode, he even tells Stolas that he doesn't do love potions because he wants all things to come naturally, whether carnal or romantic. Now what Osmodeus wants at the end of the day is a place to just be as playboy as he can be, and to do that he needs to keep his people happier than the other royals and elites are keeping their own people. Many of the other royals seem to rely heavily on guards and not mingling with the common folk as much. The exception to this appears to be Beelzebub, though she seems to need the energy of people in general in order to produce her Beelzejuice's honey. So it's not like Osmodeus, who seems to actually just be more personable. While Beelzebub will bend over backwards to try and help someone at her party in particular, she throws the orphans of her ring into terrible pounds, such as the one Luna was adopted from. Asmodeus, on the other hand, seems to have built a system where the succubus can do what comes naturally to them, while profiting enough to live better than the average demon in other rings. There seems to be exceptions to this, as the deep-sea demons of envy appear to be suburbanites, and the lower classes of sloth seem to be well off all in all, but they of course have their own issues, like the crippling addiction their people have due to the pharmaceutical industry that they rely on. At the end of the day, every ring has its trade-offs, and I imagine none of them will ever truly be a paradise, but less seems to be a comfier place to live in all, with less of a sharp class division that we see in the other rings. But what do you guys think? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and I'll see you next time. We recently got a list of the remaining episode titles for Season 2 of Helluva.
Full Moon. So I could say that one. Maybe starting by the Hellhounds. Apocalypse Store. A Torture. Maybe Envy. Ghost. Yeah, not sure what that may be on. Mastermind, well, maybe fighting the villain. Well, I know we're not getting the 12 for Christmas, but maybe it's a Christmas special and like part of the end and fight from episode 11, maybe.
And after the recent episode had Fizzarolli and Blitz apologizing and making up, fans were very curious about what the episode Apology Tour would be about. Who will Blitz apologize to, and how will it go? Let's discuss. Now, in the most recent episode, Blitz crossed paths again with Fizzarolli, where we got confirmation on just how deep their history goes, and just how responsible Blitz is for shaping Fizzarolli's life, for good and for bad. We knew from the Season 2 premiere that Fizz and Blitz worked together at the family circus run by Blitz's dad, where Fizzarolli's performance led him to be much more popular than Blitz. Despite this, Blitz developed a great friendship with Fizzarolli, and later in life had some serious romantic feelings for Fizzarolli as well. The night of Fizzarolli's birthday, Blitz wanted to tell Fizzarolli how he felt, so Blitz wrote what looks like a love letter with a heart sticker sealing the envelope and the words "For Fizz's eyes only" written on it. When he looked in the circus tent, however, Blitz saw that Fizzarolli was receiving a card from Blitz's own father, Cash Buxo. This card clearly said, "I wish you were my son," alluding to how much more valuable Fizzarolli is as an asset because of his talent and fame than Blitz naturally is as Buxo's real child. Now, Fizz seemed to truly enjoy his friendship with Blitz as well, but in the back of his mind, he always recognized that Blitz was jealous, and he interpreted this jealousy as turning into a hatred over time, instead of it actually developing into romantic love. While Blitz was jealous, he wasn't consumed by it. It didn't define his relationship with Fizz, but instead, it was probably part of what made Blitz love Fizzarolli the way he did. When Blitz saw his dad giving this card to Fizz, however, it made him upset, as his own father wishing Fizz was his son was a bit too much. In his frustration, Blitz pushed an imp carrying a cake out of the way, and the birthday candles ended up catching the tent on fire. This led to some serious burns for a lot of imps, especially after some fireworks go off right in Fizzarolli's face. This left the majority of Fizz's body in the white scars imps develop after a serious injury, as well as his limbs destroyed, his horns broken down to nubs, and his voice seemingly fried, leading to his Beetlejuice sound he has as an adult. This should have ruined Fizzarolli's life, and at the time, it really seemed that way. But in the end, Fizzarolli got everything he could have hoped for. Well, the pain was tremendous, and recovery was likely very hard. He ended up becoming one of the most famous figures in all of Hell, brought into such fame by the love of his life, who's one of the highest-ranking royals. Now, because everything worked out perfectly for Fizz in the end, Blitz was able to easily make up with Fizzarolli by simply explaining that he didn't purposely light the tent on fire, nor did he abandon Fizzarolli. Instead, we can see from storyboards that Blitz says the word mom before running off, indicating he was distracted by the fate of his mother, who we have pretty much confirmed died in this horrible accident. Fizz now gets to have his great new life, but also gets the closure of knowing his friend didn't mean the tragic event to happen on purpose, and actually cared deeply about him. Now, the next episode coming out for us is a mid-season special starring Mammon and featuring Fizzarolli again as per its title. While Blitz or IMP could be in this episode, I feel that the inclusion of Blitz in episode 6 was to set up episode 7 to just be about Fizzarolli and Mammon. Following that is an episode titled Full Moon, which is of course probably going to be about Blitz and Stolas meeting up, and Stolas giving Blitz an Osmodian crystal to end their monthly full moon arrangement. By the way, sound off in the comments if you want a video breaking down how I think that will go, because oh boy do I have some ideas. But following that, we have the episode Apology Tour, which I think will be a more direct follow-up to what Blitz went through in this episode with Fizz. Now, after making up with his childhood friend, Blitz will get into his head that he can fix more of his relationships by simply going to them and apologizing, making an apology tour. But of course, I imagine this will go horrendously and horribly wrong. After some funny gags of maybe apologizing to Moxie and Millie and Luna for his general bad behavior, while also continuing to have bad behavior, I imagine Blitz will try to meet up with people from his past, such as Veronica. Veronica is an elite among the succubus, and a famous pop star both in Hell and on Earth. Because of that, Blitz likely lumps her in with the royals. In the most recent episode, Blitz confirmed that he sees the royals, and presumably other elites like them, as all being the same, all just using the lower class imps like himself, the same way they use all of the lower species of Hell to do their will. The royals use their power to create a system that is oppressive to the lower species of Hell, and in doing so, they create a system where they can go to lower class imps and make them feel special, and like they are escaping the harshness of Hell by getting close to a royal, only to be cast aside later when the blue blood gets bored. Because of this, Blitz likely had very little patience for Veronica, despite her seeming genuinely in love with him, as per the tattoo of his name on her arm, and how sad she looked when singing about what he had done to her in episode 7 of season 1. When Blitz finally had enough of Veronica, he'd abandon her at a motel, stealing her car keys and credit cards to go get horse riding lessons in Wrath. So Blitz apologizing for this in general is probably a really bad idea, but I think Blitz won't do it nearly as well as he could, and probably will be leaning into a humorous, over-the-top apologizing bit, while being all pompous and assuming the others will forgive him. People like Veronica will likely try to just walk away from the situation at first, but Blitz would double down, insisting on needing forgiveness, and shenanigans would inevitably ensue. As Blitz goes down his list, however, he'd get to increasingly crazy situations. He could, for instance, decide to apologize to Stella for sleeping with Stolas, though we saw in the pilot that this is actually the first thing Blitz did after falling out of Stolas' window and into Stella's tea party. She would of course be angered by the mere sight of Blitz and sick the guards on him if nothing else. Along the way, we might see him go to all sorts of people he wronged in little and big ways, but at the bottom of that list would be his sister, Barbie Wire. Barbie Wire is the other side of the coin of the tragic accident of the family circus. Fizzarolli was destroyed physically, but somehow managed to walk away having everything he could possibly want in life. Barbie Wire had the opposite experience. She is noted by Veronica as having fallen from fame, and after her release from rehab, she's smuggling drugs from Earth into Hell instead of performing or anything like that. She had decent fame and probably more coming before the circus burnt down, and of course, on top of all this, she and Blitz lost their mother in that fire. This would be the first time that Blitz would have to make a genuine and serious apology, probably taking his time with the others in his life only to avoid this one, because deep down he knows how it would go, which is bad. Barbie Wire has no reason to really forgive Blitz in the way he wants, because to him, forgiveness means smiles and hugs like he had with Fizzarolli. Perhaps worse than their mother's death is that Barbie Wire became so addicted that she had to go to rehab in the first place. I've theorized in previous videos that the root of Barbie's addiction issues is less about the trauma that she went through at the circus, though I would say that does play a role, and more about having to deal with Blitz after the fact. His neediness seemed to be a huge issue that pushed her away from him, and after rehab, she seems to be able to stay sober as long as he isn't in her life. Of course, he also recently ruined the job she had in the sloth ring, smuggling drugs from Earth, so Blitz has that to apologize for too. I wouldn't be surprised if he led with that, acting really over the top and pompous like he might have with the others, expecting her to just smile and forgive him and not think about the greater issues that surround their relationship as twins. Of course, these are just my theories, and while I like to predict how I think episodes will go, most of them end up taking their premises into wildly unexpected directions. So pretty much anything can happen in the Apology Tour episode, and this video may just be another entry in the deep cut fanfiction Helluverse. But what do you think we're thinking about things? At the end of episode 6 of season 2, it's implied that Stolas and thus Blitz will in fact get an osmosis.
So we're going to have a break there and go check some stuff, and then we will come back and finish this.
But what does this mean for the future of the show? Well, my theory today is that it's not only going to be a bit dramatic, but that it will ultimately make things worse for Blitz and Stolas' relationship, despite Stolas giving it to Blitz in an attempt to make things better. Now, the next episode is going to be about Mammon and Fizzarolli, but following that, we are going to get an episode titled Full Moon. The full moons are, of course, when Blitz goes to visit Stolas so he can use the grimoire for his monthly ritual. This allows a sort of officialness to their arrangement. Stolas does actually need the book for work, and it forces Blitz to commit to a night with him instead of constantly making excuses and trying to see him as little as possible. However, after the events at Ozzy's club, Stolas has come to realize that he's holding Blitz too close with this arrangement and started looking for ways to help Blitz maintain his business without needing the grimoire. From the Osmodian grimoire, after a fan translated the runes on the page, we learn that Osmodius is able to provide Osmodian crystals to his population of succubus, which Stolas notes as being among the only ones able to travel freely to Earth. While some of these crystals do make it to the black market, Blitz didn't seem to find a way to get his hands on one to use permanently, and stealing the grimoire from Stolas became his best bet. These jewels can allow you easy travel to Earth as well as give you a human disguise so you can blend in there. Now, at first, Osmodius said he couldn't do it, since Fizzarolli had his grudge against Blitz, but after Blitz saved Fizzarolli and Stolas helped Osmodius avoid a horrible contract that would have led to Fizzarolli dying anyways, the episode ended with them agreeing to let Stolas have the crystal so Blitz could keep his business going. Now, the consequences for this are going to be very interesting. First off, Blitz will be able to access a more natural human disguise, allowing him to blend in with humans the way Stolas and Luna are able to.
Yes.
Luna's disguise seems to be store-bought hell magic, but the Osmodian crystal has this feature built in as part of its use for succubus on Earth, who need to look like humans to seduce unexpecting victims. The portals can be used by other demons as well, as we see Blitz using a random incubus's portal in the episode where we meet his sister, but the disguise, I imagine, only works for the person actually wearing it. Moxie and Millie could get their own magic disguises too, since that's what Luna did, but I imagine the show will just have Blitz with an extra human-looking disguise for now, and Moxie and Millie still shuffling around in their silly outfits. Now, the biggest thing this will do for Blitz is give him the space he needs, and that is why Stolas wants this. He was trying to force a relationship to develop with Blitz by insisting on a bare minimum as part of their arrangement, and hoping that love would blossom naturally from there, but this has failed. While Blitz does seem to care about Stolas somewhere inside of him, Blitz believes that all the royals are incapable of a real relationship with an imp, particularly someone like Blitz, and that Stolas is only acting like he loves Blitz for the time being. With this crystal, Blitz would not have to be there every month, as Stolas will still do his job without it, and the Osmodian crystal is free for Blitz to use as needed. It would make everything Blitz and Stolas do from here on out entirely Blitz's choice. And while that is a healthy mindset based off of what they've been through, it's also the opposite of what has made their relationship work and what little positive ways that it has for Blitz. What little feelings Blitz does have for Stolas comes from the fact that Blitz is able to be his worst self and still have someone like Stolas clinging to him, insisting on their arrangement. While he says this is just an act that Stolas puts up, Blitz has to say that because he can't let himself believe that someone like Stolas could ever actually like him for the long haul. Blitz wants someone to die with, to be there for him until the end, or him for them, but he believes Stolas will get bored with him eventually. The only way for Blitz to know that he is wanted is for Stolas to go out of his way to make Blitz a part of his life. While Stolas may have gone too far with how their arrangement was established, Blitz seems to find security in someone not giving up when he's behaving poorly and trying to get away. Now, there's a lot of ways this episode could go in the beginning, and I'm not really sure what their plan is yet. It could start as a very awkward reunion that's kind of cute and clumsy, with Stolas trying to work his way to talking about the Osmodian crystal, and Blitz starting to lean into their roles. Stolas, however, trying to give Blitz space, would be ignoring Blitz's advances just when he's first starting to give them. The real kicker would be when Stolas gives Blitz the Osmodian crystal. Since Blitz needs that insistence from Stolas to feel wanted, he would feel like this is actually Stolas trying to get rid of Blitz entirely. I imagine this night to end up going horribly wrong at this point, with Blitz feeling like a fool for setting himself up to try and enjoy the dynamic he had become trapped in, only to feel like he was being kicked out of it. At the end of the day, Blitz will get what he seemed to want, a way to travel to Earth without having to worry about Stolas and their impending visits, and of course, he would find himself missing that. All that being said, there is a chance this goes the other way. In a previous video, I talked about how the episode following this one is called Apology Tour, and could focus on Blitz trying to apologize to everyone he feels that he is wronged. This seems to be a response to his recent adventure in the Green Ring with Fizzaroli. After years of being mad at Blitz for starting the circus fire that crippled Fizzaroli, it was revealed that Blitz only did this by accident and had tried to make contact with Fizzaroli after the fact. Realizing that Blitz had not hated Fizzaroli, but seemingly even had feelings for him, Fizz was able to forgive Blitz for what happened, and it was a surprisingly happy way to end the episode. That being said, Blitz may actually get the Osmodian crystal and realize that on some level, he owes Stolas an apology too. Stolas abused his power by holding the one thing over Blitz's head, what he needed to do his business for a monthly carnal arrangement, but all of this started because Blitz came back to Stolas' mansion to rob him, just like he did as a child for his father. When Blitz got wrapped up with Stolas in person, he had no problem attacking and then seducing Stolas in order to get the book. In the morning, Blitz didn't try to make an arrangement with Stolas for the book, but instead tried to continue stealing it before crashing into Stella's tea party and irrevocably changing Stolas' marriage and family life. Blitz, upon receiving the Osmodian crystal and perhaps even hearing that Fizzaroli made sure he got it, might realize the power of forgiveness and not have a meltdown against Stolas, but be inspired to try and make things right with others as well. However cool that idea is, I still lean heavily towards Blitz and Stolas having more drama. They'll still have reasons to keep bumping into each other in the latter half of Season 2, but I imagine a lot of the story to come will be about how Blitz and Stolas are now that they aren't in this cyclical arrangement that defines the way they live. This will be an opportunity for both characters to figure out who they are without each other, and of course to see what they might miss about each other. Already in Episode 2 of Season 2, they seem to have missed each other after their time apart, and I imagine there's been even more tension since Ozzy's and then Stolas' subsequent hospitalization. Now that they don't have to see each other, Blitz will probably be upset, but eventually he'll double down on wanting to be in Stolas' life in some form, and when the opportunity arises, he'll probably take it, even if it's just another facade of an arrangement. The show is said to have a 4th season planned by VIZZyPop on Twitter, and I doubt it will get perfectly resolved by the end of Season 2. And whatever the characters are going through in the second half of the season will probably just be setting up another interesting new dynamic for the characters to explore in Season 3. This will probably be a 4th season arc that has them slowly dealing with their issues and dynamic before finding a proper balance that works for them.
One thing I want to say, all these damn rom-com live action shows try to do this at the most annoying thing, but look how good they're doing it.
But what do you think, and how long have you been thinking of this? We're all very concerned. Let me know how concerning your thinking is in the comments down below, and I'll see you next time. I love cartoons about demons and hell and all things esoteric, but in the nuance of Lucifer's character in our various stories, I've seen more and more people not just trying to adopt the idea of Lucifer as some sort of mythological hero, but that God himself is the ultimate villain. So today I want to talk about why that is, using Lucifer from Hazbin Hotel as a basis. In Hazbin Hotel, Lucifer is a fallen angel, and the highest rank. The latest episode of Helluva Boss filled in a lot of gaps in Blitz's story, and while a lot of people have been requesting I make a timeline video for him, I wanted to talk about the life of Stolas first because of how important that will be to Blitz's own story in that video. Subscribe so you don't miss it. Now, the earliest we know of Blitz and Stolas actually comes from them meeting as kids, roughly 25 years before Blitz was seen stealing the grimoire from Stolas, as explored in Season 2, Episode 1, The Circus. Fans were shocked in flashbacks in this episode to learn that Stolas was only in his early 30s in the present, being a child just 25 years ago. While this makes sense for what we could assume of Blitz's age, Stolas was assumed to be a long-living immortal demon based on the historical writings of Stolas as a fallen angel as far back as the 1600s. Because of this, some fans speculated there was a previous Stolas who had died, hence why Paimon was so interested in making sure that Stolas had a precautionary heir with Stella. However, Stella herself is the sister to Andrealphys, another real demon from the Ars Goetia, who she seems to have grown up with. Andrealphys also being a younger demon in the hierarchy would indicate that there was no death of a previous Stolas, but that these characters are being born for the first time.
Okay.
Now, while both of these characters are inspired by those real-life writings from the Lesser Key of Solomon, we don't know that they were actual entities known in the world of Hazbin Hotel and Helluva Boss in the 1600s, the way they are in our world. So there might not be some big lore reason explaining this, other than Helluva Boss's world just having a different history. But some fans do speculate that Hell moves at a different speed than time on Earth, and that in Stolas' 35 years of life, he may have been able to affect hundreds of years of human history, though again, this isn't proven. Now, we only see one day in the life of Stolas and Blitz as children in this episode, but from it, we learn a lot of the scope of each of their lives. As Stolas wakes up, happy to see his father on his birthday, we see some portraits in the background of Stolas as an egg, then as an ugly baby bird, and finally as a child, where we get some very interesting insight into Stolas' upcoming crush on Blitz. In these portraits, Stolas is often seen with a red stuffed imp, a simple toy, but one that seems very special to Stolas. Stolas wants a closer relationship with Paimon, it would seem, but he is of course presented as a very distant father, one who doesn't take the time to really engage with Stolas and instead tries to just placate him when possible. Stolas is instead raised more by the servants and the help, and with this being Imp City, most of the help is going to be imps. Even in this episode, we can see that Stolas is taken care of by an imp-type butler, and while he's not affectionate with Stolas, he was probably a very important part of Stolas' early development and imprinting. Between the imps around him acting as parents, and the stuffed imp toy being his only real friend or companion, it's easy to see why Stolas developed a fixation with imps in particular for later romantic and sexual attraction. Stolas started his birthday happy to finally learn his purpose in the Ars Goetia, which is of course to learn the stars and study their prophecies for the benefit of Hell. But Paimon traumatized Stolas by revealing that he was already arranged to marry another Goetia, the very angry and abusive Stella. This makes Stolas cry, and to placate him, Paimon takes Stolas to the circus. Paimon enjoys this quite a bit, but Stolas doesn't seem to in the beginning. As an adult in Season 1, Episode 2, Stolas would behave more like Paimon while at Lululand with Octavia, with her being the one who is bored, or rather terrified, at the Fizzarelli Circus performance. This indicates that as a child, Paimon may have had similar experiences of not enjoying the circus either, but enjoys it as an adult because he remembers important memories of perhaps his own father there, if Paimon can be said to have a father.
Okay.
Stolas doesn't begin to really enjoy the circus until he sees Blitz, which becomes his positive memory he would associate with it later with trips to Lululand with Octavia. Blitz's introduction here appealed to Stolas beyond his natural interest in imps, such as the others performing at the circus. Even Fizzarelli was here, who was famous as the star of the circus and later as one of the top performers in all of Hell. Blitz catches Stolas' attention instead for whatever reason, and resonated with Blitz's awkward humor. Stolas himself is rather awkward, but lacks the kind of confidence Blitz does, so he probably found Blitz as relatable but cool. Now, the big thing here is that Stolas came here knowing that he is in a non-negotiable arranged marriage with a horrifying girl. And while Stolas may have already been leaning more into his interest in men at this age, it would seem to me that part of his crush on Blitz was inspired by his desire to actually avoid romance altogether in a way. Blitz to Stolas was the potential perfect friend, one of his own stuffed animals that he imagined so many adventures with as a kid finally come to life, swinging around from ropes and jumping off of circus balls, and still being awkward and seemingly approachable. What Stolas perhaps saw was not an escape from a marriage, but a way to have an emotional relationship more appropriate for his age. A deep friendship, though of course it was still through the lens of a sort of crush. Of course, that wasn't the reality of the situation, as a lot of what Stolas was projecting is his ideas of a perfect friend onto Blitz, who had very little interest in Stolas early on. After the circus, Stolas convinces Paimon to buy Blitz for the day, something Blitz wasn't super stoked about, and only did because his father insisted that he rob the Goetia for his family's benefit. In this time, Stolas has a lot of fun, thinking he is playing pirates with Blitz, which was in fact a game that Blitz seemed to want to play with Fizz, but that Fizz threatened to punch him over if he kept talking about it. While things started awkward, Stolas had a blast, and Blitz seemed to really have some fun by the end of it too. The important note Stolas left on, however, was that he was actually really scared about his other duties as an Ars Goetia, such as uncovering the prophecies. In many ways, his fear of marrying Stella was his fear of failing the Ars Goetia overall, and not being able to find the answers that the Goetia, and really his father in particular, need. Stolas was worried he would
Makes sense.
fail in every regard, and Blitz became a symbol in his head that day of a sort of escape, a sort of safe place he could be when the rest of his life was nothing but misery for him, save for the love he has for his daughter Octavia. Following this birthday, Stolas was still struggling with the prophecies 25 years later, the night where Blitz first tried to steal his grimoire. His marriage, of course, was also failing, and Octavia was the only positive thing he seemed to have in his life at that point. At this point, to say Stolas' marriage was failing is honestly kind of an understatement. At the party, we see Stolas being outright insulted by Stella, and she doesn't seem to be afraid to hit him. Now, when Stolas first brings Blitz back to his room, it's very interesting. He had just had a lot of booze after a mean comment from Stella, and was being a bit flirty, but actually ended up pulling back when Blitz leaned into it. Blitz, of course, wanted the grimoire, so was trying to seduce and distract Stolas so he can get the book and get out, but Stolas kept pulling away. What's interesting is that Stolas doesn't pull away once he interprets Blitz as doing something genuinely controlling to him. Before this, Stolas seems unsure about Blitz's approach, and perhaps is even turned off by Blitz asking Stolas what he wants Blitz to do to him, but leaning into it when Blitz just took control of the situation. Most of Stolas' life, people have been putting on an act in order to please him, and what he wants is to feel genuinely chaste. Now, that can be faked, and Blitz does do that here, but it's easy to see how Stolas let himself believe that Blitz was legitimately chasing him and making Stolas feel wanted. Stolas is trapped in a weird space where he is subservient to everyone, yet largely in control. He was given a particular duty in the Ars Goetia to study prophecies that Hell needs for its future plans, so in that way, Stolas is the leader who everyone is turning to expecting answers, and in some ways, that made him the scapegoat that can be punished when it's just something that's unsolvable, even for someone with a greater mind than him.
That's
Between
true.
that and his lack of a real father in his young life, Stolas wants to feel like someone else is in control and in a way taking care of him. That idea, combined with Stolas wanting to feel chaste, like someone wants him even if he says that they shouldn't be doing this, or that he was only teasing, makes him feel appreciated in a way, like he is irresistible to someone. This is the opposite of the treatment he gets from his wife, and perhaps really from most people. While Stolas didn't seem to have any affairs before Blitz, I imagine anyone who attempted to perhaps seduce him used similar tactics to Blitz early on that were unsuccessful. Just asking Stolas what he wanted, making it about what they could do for him as long as he was in charge and directing them so they knew they were doing it right. Now, after biting Stolas to stop him from noticing the grimoire was moved, Stolas feels like Blitz is in control and just ravaging him, which Blitz uses as an excuse to blindfold and tie up Stolas and walk out with the grimoire. However, Stolas' speech as Blitz walks away makes him change his mind. Stolas talks about how he's been craving this passion for so long, essentially his entire life, and to make it worse, the fact that it's Blitz made it all the more important to him. Blitz decided to spend the night with Stolas, which he didn't really think through, as he was going to take the grimoire and disappear, but in the end, Stolas still leaned into the delusion. The fact that Stolas still wanted an arrangement after he realized Blitz was there to steal his grimoire shows that Stolas may have understood Blitz's intentions that first night better than he let on, and on some level was perhaps trying to subtly say what he wanted, thinking Blitz would pick up on it and take control of the situation. All in all, it paints a really sad portrait of a man who is robbed of most forms of affection in life until he was able to have a daughter and at least know the joys of parenting, though while still being under some of the greatest pressure in hell. He's someone who is willing to lie to himself so that he can get what he wants, with the hope that if he plays pretend long enough with Blitz, Blitz will really start to believe it too. After about a year of this in the show, however, Stolas has decided that he can't keep holding Blitz close to him like this if he really cares about him. While it was a long time for him to make it to this decision after a lot of toxic actions, it does reflect on his general character of wanting what is best for the people he loves at the end of the day, something he learned first from taking care of his daughter, and that he can now use to grow as a person and give Blitz the space he needs to run his business without worrying about the emotional state of Stolas. Of course, Blitz has his own side of the story, but that will be explored in a future video where I do a and I'll see you guys. Our previous video was a timeline for the life of Stolas, a sort of part 1 to this video, which will be a detailed outline of the life of Blitz. Today, Blitz is the big boss over at IMP, the Immediate Murder Professionals, a group of 3 imps and their hellhound who sneak up to Earth to kill humans on behalf of other humans who have died and gone to hell. The earliest we see of Blitz's life, however, wasn't until Season 2, Episode 1, which was largely flashbacks about Stolas and Blitz as children. From these flashbacks, we learn that 26 years ago, Blitz was a child working at his family circus owned by his father, Cash Buckso. Now, we don't have an exact timeline or even know exactly what year it is in Hell in the show, but with Season 2, Episode 1 airing in 2022, it's pretty easy to get a rough timeline by working backwards from there. In Episode 7 of Season 1, which takes place on the same night as Episode 1 of Season 2, we learn that Moxie and Millie have been married for just about a year, making it about a year since Blitz first started seeing Stolas as adults. If it is roughly 2022 in the show, then that means that these flashbacks take place 26 years in the past, roughly 1996 in Hell's calendar. From signs around Imp City, we know it to have been established in 1981, meaning Blitz was born sometime after Imp City had been constructed, but that his family was part of the first wave of imps that would have really brought Imp City to life. Stolas then was also born sometime after Imp City's construction. However, it seems that the two events are somewhat related, with Imp City being a territory built with a palace marked for Paimon that would eventually be rebranded with Stolas' seal in the present. Cash Buckso would employ his family at the circus, but would also open it up to other families and imps as well. From his own family, Barbie Wire would seem to find a lot of success based on Veroska's comment about her no longer being famous in Season 1, Episode 3, but the big star came from outside of Buckso's family, Fizzaroli. Even as a kid, Fizzaroli just had a mass appeal that audiences loved. Blitz not only had a hard time keeping up with Fizz in this way, but the perfect performance of Fizz made it even more clear just how bad and uncoordinated Blitz's own act was. On his own, audiences may have at least laughed at Blitz's performance for being so bad, but seeing the perfect performance of Fizzaroli can make that kind of act lose its charm and appeal. Despite being shown up by Fizzaroli and really everyone, Blitz would still appreciate and love his circus family, perhaps everyone but his father. It's hard to say just how twisted Blitz and Buckso's relationship might have been, as this episode may have only been scratching the surface of it. In the flashbacks, we see that Buckso has no problem selling Blitz to the Goetia for a day, and while there, has Blitz risk his life to steal as much of their expensive goods as he can. This seems to be the first time Buckso made Blitz do something like this, but I doubt it was the last time that it happened. In flashbacks, we haven't seen Blitz's sister or his mother, but in this episode, Buckso uses them as a sort of threat against Blitz, saying Blitz would help rob the Goetia if he really loved them. Now, in Hell, there is a huge overlap between sexual-focused industries and the general entertainment industry. The joke of Hazbin Hotel is that Angel Dust isn't just an adult film star, but he's supposed to be one of the most famous entertainment figures in all of Hell because of it. With that in mind, even outside of adult films, the biggest pop star we know in Hell is also a succubus who performs in much the same way that other succubus do at nightclubs. Fizzaroli is perhaps even more famous than Angel Dust at this point, considering his robot love dolls that are all over Hell. With that in mind, it's not much of a stretch to think that Buckso's family circus probably overlapped with some escorting, a pattern Blitz got used to at a young age with the way he was able to be simply rented by Paimon for the day. Blitz, as an adult, seems to have experienced a pattern of royals and more elite demons taking advantage of him, making him insist that Stolas couldn't be any different, as Blitz sees them all the same way for some reason. It's possible that he had something of a relationship with another royal in the past through this sort of escorting service at the circus, perhaps making it impossible for him to take Stolas too seriously. Now, according to Blitz, he and Fizzaroli have only crossed paths twice in the last 15 years, making the accident roughly 15 years before the present and 14 years before the start of the show. That would mean it happened just roughly 9 to 10 years after the events of Stolas' childhood birthday where he and Blitz met. We don't really know Blitz's age as a child, but this seems to give us just enough time for Blitz, Fizz, and Barbie Wire to become roughly young adults, give or take, and keeping in mind imps age close to humans, but not exactly the same. Now, as kids, Fizz and Blitz were great friends, but Fizz admitted in Season 2, Episode 6 that he felt that Blitz was always jealous of his success. From Fizz's point of view, Blitz was upset that his father, Buckso, had given Fizz a birthday card that said that Buckso wished that Fizz was his son. This looked like it upset Blitz so much that he purposely lit the tent on fire. From there, Fizz would find himself with a face full of fireworks when everyone is frantically scrambling around and they go off in his face. His skin burns white, his horns are destroyed, and his limbs are mangled. And however, Blitz was able to reveal to Fizz in this episode that things were more complicated than that. Blitz clearly had some jealousy, but he also had strong feelings for the people in his life, whether it's his family or Fizz himself, who Blitz saw not just as his best friend, but someone he loved. That night, he had a love letter signed for Fizz's eyes only that he was going to give him, But seeing his own father give Fizz that card wishing Fizz was his son made Blitz feel like a failure. He didn't start the fire on purpose, but instead pushed an imp carrying a birthday cake out of the way, and the fire from the candles ended up lighting the tent on fire. From there, everything was a tragic accident. Still Blitz's fault, but not anything he intended at least. While it looked like Blitz just ignored Fizz when Fizz needed help, there was a lot going on after the explosions and fire, and Blitz had his own injuries as well. We can see the beginnings of a dark mark on his face that would eventually become his white scar, and his eye is so hurt that he's covering it here. Now in the actual episode, it's a bit ambiguous on why Blitz was running away, but his mouth looks like he's saying the word mom. Of course, at the end of this scene, we also see a photo in the fire that night of sister, Barbie Wire, would lose from the hospital, and Fizz would never be told that Blitz tried to reach out to see him. And in fact, Fizz would be told by whoever was taking care of him that Blitz didn't want to see him. From here, Blitz would overinvest in his relationship with his sister, but that seemed to go horribly wrong. While he thought they might get closer after losing everything, Barbie seemed to be dealing with her pain through the use of addictive substances, which eventually led her to rehab where Blitz could no longer pressure her into being there for him. While she likely wants to forgive Blitz, she can't just be in his life the way they were as kids after what he's done, even if it was an accident. It's just too much to pretend to be normal around. For a short while, Blitz would try to make a career as an entertainer, getting a job at the Greed Ring's Lululand, but here he would still find himself shown up by Fizz. At this point, Fizz would have become famous with his love robots, and Blitz would find himself being a supporting act to none other than RoboFizz, who everyone still loved more than him. It's interesting that in this scene, Blitz's makeup is covering his face, and the light is hitting it in such a way that I originally believed this scene happened before he got his scar, but we can now definitely say that this scene takes place after he got his scar and the paint is just hiding it. At some point, Blitz would either quit or even get fired from his job at Lululand and transition into more physical and violent labor that imps are typically known for. The most we know of this is Blitz working as a bodyguard for Veronica, where he was also her boyfriend. While she seems to have genuine feelings for him, what with the tattoo of his name on her, and how hurt she was by the way he abandoned her, Blitz probably felt like he wasn't appreciated in the way he wanted, and would eventually steal her keys and credit cards to go get horseback riding lessons in Wrath. It is in this time that Blitz worked with Veronica that I imagine Blitz did the rounds at various parties where he would develop his reputation, such as we saw at the Hellhound party where certain partygoers recognized him. After Veronica, Blitz would get in his head that he should start his own business, and part of that plan seemed to be adopting Luna. It's hard to say what Blitz's original intentions were with her, as he said he needed a Hellhound that was family friendly, and I took this to mean that he wanted a Hellhound who was more of a worker than a child, but when he saw how hurt Luna was in this pound, he decided that he wanted to be a real dad that day. They would move in together where Luna gets the only bedroom in their one-bedroom apartment, and Blitz would take the couch. At some point after this, Blitz would meet Moxie when they both end up in a Greed Ring prison, for reasons that were never really explained. Moxie would later be seen in a photo holding up Blitz's business license, and Moxie said that he really helped Blitz set up the business. But I think it's possible that Blitz was trying to start his business before this, just more illegally. I'd like to think he was in this jail cell with Moxie because he was trying to steal some sort of object that he could teleport to Earth with. While this is the Greed Ring he's in, I think he may have ended up here because he tried to rob a succubus of their Osmodian jewel, or perhaps some other species that got it on the black market. Following this and their granting of their business license, Blitz would end up needing to steal the grimoire from Stolas. This would be the first time that they saw each other in 25 years, and Blitz would end up having to seduce Stolas to get it. One of my favorite things about Blitz's character is that he could have just tied Stolas up and walked away with the grimoire, but something about Stolas' neediness just made Blitz go back and give Stolas the night of his life. He's a complex character, as this timeline clearly illustrates, and it says so much about the parts of him that tries to be a good person, even when he sees himself as a generally pretty messed up person. But what do you guys think? Let me know your thoughts. With the recent preview of Mammon and the confirmation that the new episode of Helluva Boss will be coming out around Halloween this year, I thought now would be a good time to talk about everything we know about this upcoming episode and everything we can theorize about it. But real quick, we're giving away the opportunity for you to choose up to 3 signed prints from your favorite cartoon voice actors. Just sign up for our Discord server and set up your account with our crew bot so you can start earning tokens every time you chat in the server or leave comments on our videos. With those tokens, you can buy entries into our upcoming raffle, the winner of which can choose up to 3 signed prints from their favorite actors in shows like Helluva or Murder Drones that they can hang on their wall. This is our biggest prize yet, with one person walking away with 3 prints of their choice, so join the server and don't miss out on this awesome giveaway. Now, Helluva is a show that thrives off of variety. While Has-Been Hotel seems to be set entirely in the Pride Ring, Helluva introduced us to 6 other rings of hell to explore. While Has-Been Hotel has a large main cast, Helluva focuses on a much smaller main cast with a larger extended cast. This allows for us to cycle through locations and characters, trying out different combinations to constantly keep things fresh. However, when asked about Fizzarolli before episode 6 of season 2 came out, VivziePop explained that the next 2 episodes would actually be very Fizzarolli focused. Following this, we got a list of episode titles, with episode 7 being titled Mammon's Magnificent Musical Mid-Season Spectacular, featuring Fizzarolli. This confirmed not just that we'd be seeing Fizzarolli again, but seemingly that this would also be the 2nd episode in a row where the focus will seemingly be on the Green Ring. While the mid-season musical special could involve a tour all over Hell, it seems to be just the performance that Asmodeus and Fizz were talking about in episode 6. The Greed Ring in particular is important to the show, perhaps the most important ring so far, with us having 3 episodes so far taking place primarily in the Greed Ring. Greed was the first other ring we saw outside of the Pride Ring, despite the fact that Blitz seems to be from Pride and Moxie and Millie seem to be from Wrath. Mammon was also the first prince we got a look at and got to really hear about outside of Lucifer, with us seeing his face printed on money and references to him being all over Lululand. While we've had a lot of fun with Asmodeus, and he is definitely the most prominent prince so far, he's been shown to be not the ultimate villain to Blitz and Stolas, but perhaps even a friend and an ally after Stolas and Blitz helped bring Fizz back to him. Asmodeus instead is perhaps being set up to be the ultimate victim for who will be the ultimate villain, which I think may very well be Mammon. So far, the princes are actually not very evil. Asmodeus, as the Prince of Lust, just wants to live a party boy lifestyle with his people. Beelzebub, as the Prince of Gluttony, isn't great considering the Hellhound adoption pounds, but as a person to get to know and be friends with, she seems very approachable at her parties. Lucifer is the King of Hell, and like the others, he will have his own issues, but ultimately doesn't seem to be that evil either, at least in relation to what we expect from Hell. Mammon seems to be the odd one out so far, with him having the worst ring in Hell to live in, and Asmodeus being afraid to send Fizzarolli there on his own because of how lawless it is. Lucifer even seems to have issue with Mammon, who ripped off Lululand from Lucifer's more popular Lulu World in the Pride Ring. However, the courts of Hell found Mammon's park legally distinct, allowing Mammon to continue siphoning off the money that should be going to people like Lucifer, who seem to put his heart into his passion projects. Mammon seems happy to destroy his own ring for profit, and based off of the shark demons dealing with Angel in the Has-Been Hotel prequel comics, his practices seem to leak into other rings to some degree, which I imagine always makes them even worse than they are under their own prince's rule. Has-Been Hotel is ultimately a show about the self-destructive nature of humans and their vices, but Helluva is about the 7 deadly sins at the end of the day, and while pride is considered the greatest of these sins because it can be used to justify anything, greed is often seen as its more disgusting runner-up. Pride is at least rooted in great power, even if it's an overestimation of one's power, but greed cares not for what you actually contribute to be worthy of that pride. Greed can be ugly and shallow and have no desire to prop itself up as right or moral with pride. Instead, greed can excuse the destruction of all things and people because the profit that can be made from it. Asmodeus seems to have issues with Mammon despite them having a close business relationship, what with Fizzarolli somehow becoming part of Mammon's brand. The last episode of Helluva really taught us a lot about Fizzarolli's past, and it seems insane that we'd have a second episode focused largely on him right after all these revelations about what happened to him at the family circus. But with that in mind, I think that episode may have just been setting up this mid-season special, where we will get answers to who saved Fizzarolli and what happened to him after the circus accident caused by Blitz. Asmodeus, of course, has great feelings for Fizzarolli and also seems responsible for the mechanical limb enhancements that Fizzarolli has. Asmodeus seemed to develop this technology specifically to make love bots, but with Fizzarolli crippled, they could be used to restore function to his body. Because they are mechanical, he could also use the limbs to move more wild and crazy, giving him that extra crazy clown aesthetic with the way he stretches and flips around. This would indicate that Asmodeus picked up Fizzarelli first and restored his ability to move, but it raises the question of why either of them would really want to have Fizzarelli go work for Mammon, and I think this episode will have this answered in one of two ways. First, I think that Mammon may have actually been the one to find Fizzarelli, and perhaps was even the one who saved Fizzarelli that night of the fire. Mammon seems to want to steal other people's ideas, and when he saw that the somewhat famous Fizzarelli had lost his limbs and his performing space, he probably saw an opportunity to easily elevate Fizzarelli to a new level of fame that would benefit him more. In photos from his phone, Fizz can be seen wearing Mammon merch with Blitz as teenagers, indicating they both were fans of him long before Fizz would end up working for Mammon, and Fizz's interest as a jester or clown was probably heavily influenced by Mammon over his childhood as a performer at Buxo's Circus. Asmodeus would have already been developing Lovebot technology perhaps that Mammon would have been aware of, and I think it was Mammon who connected Fizz to Asmodeus to get those enhancements in this theory, and Asmodeus would fall in love with Fizz along the way. While the two were pretty clearly in love with each other in the present, their relationship was presented as being purely sexual to outside observers at first, and I think that it wasn't until later that their feelings would have developed and they would have had more of a relationship going on. And over time, Asmodeus would have taken Fizzarelli closer and closer into his life and his business and away from Mammon's, though Fizz of course is still under contract with him. Now, the alternative theory is that Fizzarelli actually did meet Asmodeus first and got his enhancements from Asmodeus then, but later would sign on to be the brand image for Mammon, though that seems less likely. It is possible, considering Asmodeus relies largely on sexual industries like his erotic toys and lovebots, and loaning out Fizz to Mammon may have been one of the many ways they bring in money to the Lust Ring, so they don't have to have a more essential industry like the hard-working farmers of Wrath.
Makes sense.
However, the discomfort Asmodeus has with Fizz working for Mammon, and Fizz being seen as Mammon's brand instead of Asmodeus's brand as a performer in Lust, really says to me that Mammon managed to meet Fizzarelli first and Asmodeus second. Regardless of which direction this goes, it will be an interesting look into yet another Prince of Hell, perhaps the most important one to us in terms of the overarching story, as I think Asmodeus is going to want Fizz to get further and further away from Mammon, and that may cause problems. Mammon seems the most corrupt, as are his people. Crimson was unafraid to take Fizz hostage to get what he wanted out of Asmodeus, so I don't imagine Mammon would have much issue taking Fizz prisoner when he decides that Asmodeus is affecting Fizz's work as part of their brand. The episode as a whole will probably be very musical and animated, and with how much we learned in the last episode, I may be overestimating just how much we will learn from this one. But what do you guys think? Let me know your thoughts. Raffle. The latest episode of Helluva surprised us with a Sunday release today, so we're going to break it all down, with a special focus on just how heart-wrenching this episode is. Spoilers ahead for those who may not have realized it's out yet, go watch it. Oh, and if you haven't seen it yet, I released my own animated pilot last week called The Magical Girl Garnet Heart Show. It's a sort of action comedy about a magical girl and her talking cat, played by sarcastic chorus.
Let's keep things simple, you know? Rescue some cats stuck in some trees or something.
The cat's in a tree, it's because we want to be there. Leave us the fuck alone.
I like that
Links in the
phrase
pinned
so
comment
much.
down below. Go check it out and consider being among the first to donate for more episodes. This episode opened with a flashback of Mammon performing at one of his clown shows where teenage Fizz and Blitz happened to be attending. At this point, they were still friends, a few years before the tragic accident that would leave Fizzarelli scarred and broken. For some reason, clowning is extremely popular in Hell, and it crosses over into being extremely sexual for some reason. It's not really explained why clowning is so popular, but I think a lot of it comes down to Mammon himself. Royals are natural celebrities, people who the common folk take an interest in and aspire to be like, with a lot of what is popular in Hell simply being pushed and propagandized by princes like Mammon, and especially by princes like Mammon who try to profit off of everything they can.
Yeah.
Following the show, Blitz and Fizz are harassed by a random imp on the street who gushes over Fizz, with him already being well known from his childhood performances at Blitz's family circus, and him being someone that a person going to Mammon's clown show would probably be at the very least somewhat aware of. Now, this fan, nicknamed Creepso in the credits, is quite the creep as his nickname suggests, but he's not the kind of creepy fan that Angel has in the Hazbin Hotel pilot, who sends him letters about his feet. That person has a fixation on Angel that is focused on wanting Angel, still not healthy, but it's rooted in actually wanting him. This person is shown here and later in the episode not to really want Fizz or even really like his work, but rather is attracted to Fizz because he is successful, and believes that that success is something that he himself deserves. In his mind, Fizz is someone who could elevate him to what he believes is his rightful place in the spotlight. As he explains in his rant, he believes that it is specifically Fizz's fame that can be combined with his raw, undiscovered talent, as he calls it. Later, he shows himself as imagining being in love with Fizz, but in those scenarios, Fizz is just a prisoner who treats him like he's the greatest thing in the world. Now, within any group of people, even a fandom, you'll find those who are empathetic and others who are narcissistic. Empathetic fans tend to enjoy a fandom for the actual entertainment value, and narcissistic people tend to enjoy things because of the way they can use it to elevate themselves. Some fans write passionate fan fictions about the shows they love because they enjoy just creating little scenarios where they get to live in the world with the characters they like. And narcissistic fans tend to write stories attempting to revise the author's work because they saw it as flawed. That was more the kind of fan that Creepso is. When loving Fizz is what he thinks will elevate him, he does that. Not just to Fizz's face, but to the public as well. Because publicly liking someone who is popular can help others liking you to them. When Fizz doesn't immediately like Creepso, or help him to make his dreams come true, or develop a personal connection with him, Creepso self-destructs and has to belittle Fizz. This is something narcissists do because they know that no matter how bad or evil they are coming off, that legitimately good people like Fizzarolli appears to be will still feel pain about it, and will still worry that the things this person said are true about his performance and work. The worst part is, it reinforces a fear Fizzarolli likely has that the people around him who say he is good are only saying so because it continues to help elevate them as well, and when he falls from popularity, they will turn on him, something Fizz expresses a more direct fear about later. Following this, we jump to the present, where Fizz is preparing for the big contest that Mammon holds each year, where the winner gets to renew their contract and be part of Mammon's brand, American Idol style, but with Fizzarolli winning it every year since he first started competing. Fizz is extremely worried about losing his contract this year, but the motives behind this are very complex. He claims it's for Mammon, for the fans, and for himself, but the one thing he doesn't say is that it's for Osmodius, because Osmodius won't understand at this point why Fizz feels that he has to do it for Osmodius, with Osmodius actually trying to convince Fizz not to worry, and even to give it up. Osmodius doesn't like the contract, particularly because of fans like Creepso, and Osmodius feels uncomfortable making the love robots in the image of Fizz to sell to the creepy masses. Fizz manages to convince Osmodius that he has to do this, however, and goes off to join Mammon for the show and money-making press opportunities that Mammon pushes Fizz into. As extra help, Osmodius hires Blitz, who is doing way more work as a bodyguard in Hell than as an assassin on Earth at this point, but he decides to come along to help protect Fizz, something he did when they were younger as well. Fizz wants to impress Mammon and do good by him, feeling like he owes Mammon everything in his life, and this makes Fizz give in to interacting with fans, which in turn leads to Creepso rearing his face again. Blitzo saves the day, but leaves Fizz shaken up, and he gets a visit from Osmodius asking him about why he really is pushing himself to compete in this competition. And what happened next absolutely broke my heart and had me legitimately crying. Something that doesn't usually happen to me when watching episodes, and when I do cry, it tends to be on repeat viewings after I've had time to consider the depths of the characters and their layers. In the episode just before this one, Blitz made it very clear that he thinks all the royals like Stolas and Osmodius are incapable of having feelings for lowly imps like he and Fizzarolli, and that they only fake liking them for their sexual desires. Fizz seems pretty confident with his relationship to Osmodius overall, but some part of him has to have that same fear. Osmodius claims he's known Mammon since the beginning of Hell, which would be a very long time. Osmodius is living a seemingly endless life in Hell, and Fizz will have a lifetime comparatively closer to that of a human on Earth, before disappearing into the ether entirely with no afterlife after he dies in Hell. Fizz probably feels that even if Osmodius does truly love him, that Fizz is not the first mortal demon that Osmodius had in his life, and very likely won't be the last, as there is still an eternity of existence after Fizzarolli inevitably passes away. Some part of Fizzarolli feels that he is ultimately disposable, because that's all such a short time ultimately can be for a long-living or immortal royal. And with that comes the fear that this time could be cut even shorter if Fizzarolli were to stop being the kind of appealing partner that Osmodius first fell in love with. Fizz acknowledges these fears to Osmodius, revealing that the contract with Mammon was a large part of how he and Osmodius came into each other's lives and eventually fell in love. Without that contract, Fizz is worried that Asmodeus won't love him anymore. This sounds shallow on the surface, but Fizz recognizes that a lot of what Asmodeus fell in love with was the performance and character that Mammon helped Fizz develop. Fizz says Asmodeus loves him because of who he is at his best, but underneath his hat, he revealed the shattered, broken remains of his horns and the reminder that he is covered in white scars, his limbs destroyed and replaced by robotics. Fizz sees himself essentially as a love robot, something painted and costumed and given mechanical enhancements for other people's enjoyment, but underneath that, he is a broken imp. Without all of the fame and desire that comes from the masses of hell, Fizz feels Asmodeus will, over time, grow bored with him. Fizz knows that at some point he has to lose this contest, even if he remains the most famous clown overall, and his goal becomes not to win the contract to continue this lifestyle, but to go out on top, to prove he's got it one last time and quit on his terms so that no one can ever say that he lost. We live in an era where a lot of people are being turned into brands. Business names are swapped for usernames and catchy handles that help us share our opinions, whether for profit or just for the sake of putting our own ideas out there. Even when it's not for profit, people can feel a large sense of their identity is tied to the kind of brand that they've built up. When a brand stops working and when that attention goes away, there is a natural fear that the people around them will stop loving them too. Not instantly in a single moment in some cartoony way, but slowly over time, with every year becoming more and more hollow with your partner as the brand begins to disappear, and they are left with the person underneath, with all of his scars and broken pieces. Asmodeus as the demon prince of lust is somehow the most emotionally mature and empathetic demon in all of hell. He assures Fizzaroli that he loves him for who he is, for the moments we see them enjoying together, such as in the mornings, but not for the fame that Mammon provides that ultimately just keeps Fizz away from Asmodeus instead of working together on fun projects. While anyone can be lying in this show, Asmodeus is clearly written to be a never-ending well of love for Fizz, and with his wise age, it seems that he's thought a lot about the partners he has likely taken in his very long life, and how he will treat them with grace as their mortal life begins to change and inevitably end. He assures all this by telling Fizz that he was always the great performer that he is, that Mammon was able to make him famous, but all of that just comes from having a platform where Fizz has proven year after year that he was always the real star. And then he does it again, with a pretty cool music performance among many cool music performances in this episode, with Fizz clearly beating the Envy Fish twins. However, with that victory, he is able to quit, something that Mammon did not like. Mammon holds this contest for his contract every year, but even without a victory, it seems he really wasn't willing to let go of Fizzaroli, and what happened next was absolutely epic.
For the twins, but I would say Fizz full-on win.
Mammon and Asmodeus let loose with their crazy, larger demon forms, giving us the most intense full demon mode moment since Stolas let out his Owl Beast in episode 6 of season 1. This made Beelzebub as a monster yelling at Luna look like a petty little screaming match. Ultimately, Fizz is able to quit because Asmodeus is willing to be open about his relationship with Fizz now, something his fans adored instead of hated, as people seem to have been secretly shipping Fizz and Asmodeus for some time. However, Mammon insists that they will regret this. We've been building up a bigger plot with Asmodeus and Fizz for a while now, and I imagine we will continue to explore that with Mammon trying to get revenge on the two in all sorts of ways. After what happened with Crimson and the Greed Ring in the previous episode, I imagine Mammon will be able to find a lot of allies, and instead of Asmodeus and Fizz joining Crimson against the IMP gang as I had once theorized, it seems like Asmodeus and Fizz may just be more targets for the many villains in Helluva Boss who are already after Blitz and his co-workers. But for more information on that, hit that subscribe button because we're going to have a lot of Helluva Boss theories coming out this week. Leave your opinions, theories, and topics you want me to cover in the comments down below, and don't forget to check out the Magical Girl Garnet Heart show. I think you guys are absolutely going to love it.
Yeah, check us out. Well, let's check them out.
Yesterday was the release of the brand new episode of Helluva Boss, which finally gave us a full episode of the Demon Prince Mammon. So today we're going to do a big breakdown of him and how he rules his ring. My name is Imcut, hit that subscribe button, and real quick, consider checking out my new animated series, Garnet Heart. It's about a magical girl getting ready to retire and her magic cat, played by Sarcastic Chorus.
Rescue some cats stuck in some trees or something.
The cat's in a tree, it's because we want to be there. Leave us the fuck alone.
Check out the episode
That's
using the
nice.
link in the description or pinned comment down below, or stay tuned until the end of the video for more previews. It is well known within the fandom that Hell is ruled by 7 demons, one representing each of the 7 deadly sins, inspired by the writings of the real-life Peter Binsfield, claiming them to be 7 princes of Hell. With Mammon finally appearing on screen in great HD, we can add him to our little chart of the 7 rings of Hell, where you'll see that we still have yet to meet Satan, Leviathan, or Belphegor, with VivziePop saying in a tweet that she is most excited for Satan and Leviathan, and that she was finalizing their designs for a later episode. While I expect to meet all 7 princes in the show's run, which I hear to be aiming for 4 seasons, Mammon is perhaps the most important prince in the plot so far, even more so than Asmodeus, who is slowly becoming the hero of the story. Thus far, the princes we've met have been surprisingly not that evil. Asmodeus was mean, but we saw he had a softer side and now acts like one of the most noble people in Hell, creating a paradise in Hell for those who don't mind a lust-based economy. Beelzebub doesn't seem to treat her common folk nearly as well, but still maintains a positive relationship with them and hosts amazing parties for them to enjoy, even if their enjoyment is something she ultimately benefits from. At the end of the day, the princes are some of the most human characters there are in the positive sense, having layers to the evil they are trapped in and dealing with, but ultimately being good or at least nice people. Mammon is the exception to this, and it seems to me that he has long been planned to be the ultimate villain of the series. Now, generally, Pride is considered the deadliest of the 7 deadly sins, hence why Lucifer is the Prince of Pride, but also the King of all of Hell. However, his story is saved for Hazbin Hotel, and Helluva Boss was going to need its own villain, and with Asmodeus...
Speaking of that, I will try to see if I can stream the video so Hazbin Hotel for the come out.
being one of the 7 princes, the villain had to be someone of equal power to him. Out of the 7 deadly sins, Mammon makes the most sense to be the ultimate villain of this story, and something of a villain among the princes themselves. They all have issues and elements of evil, but most of them seem to be very interested in running their people's lives to build something of a good society. Mammon, on the other hand, seems hell-bent on destroying his own ring so that he can have claim to more money than the other princes. While pride is often considered the deadliest because of the sheer ego someone can develop, greed can be seen as the more disgusting sin, one that doesn't even care to be perceived as good or noble the way that pride might. Pride has room for trying to preserve its resources, but in the greed ring, everything is being mined, polluted, and exploited to no end, making greed something of a wasteland when it perhaps could have once been something of a paradise.
True.
Greed is just one step below gluttony in the rings of hell, and gluttony looks like a place that is very beautiful. While we mostly see the area that Beelzebub uses for her parties, which are going to be nicer than everywhere else, the plant life gives the impression that the gluttony ring is not nearly as exploited for resources the way greed is, even if its people aren't living great lives there. Greed, with its ocean, could have been the beach vacation destination of hell, but it has made itself the capital of manufacturing in order to pull profits from all of the other rings that way, and in turn pollute the air and water with the toxic leftovers of their production. He strips the land for its resources, but even more scary, Mammon strips the people of their resources too. While all of the princes are going to live better lives than the common folk, there is a notable class division in the greed ring that seems unrivaled anywhere else in hell. Mammon has made it so that his people only have access to horrible jobs that don't cover living expenses, causing them to go into debt on illegal loans so that Mammon can slowly gouge the people for the little scraps they have. Mammon isn't a prince who wants to thrive, he just wants to be rich, even if that means he and his people aren't thriving at all, and he applies that mindset to everything in his life, most notably to Fizzaroli in the most recent episode. Mammon started his annual contest because he himself doesn't actually know what makes money. I've theorized that as far as clowns go, Mammon may have been able to push that as a trend in hell to weirdly obsessive degrees because he is royal and people are going to want to like the things that royals like. But beyond that, he doesn't know what makes a clown good or bad or even profitable. It's the reason that Mammon created Lululand, which is clearly a ripoff of Lucifer's more popular Lulu World in the Pride Ring. Each prince is known for their own app, which symbolizes their lifestyle in some way, with Lucifer having Lucy Master, a hell version of Ticketmaster. Through Lucy Master, the people of the Pride Ring can purchase tickets for great events, not just Lucifer's theme park, but also Lilith's concerts and other such things. Lucifer, as the Prince of Pride, takes pride in what he does, and Lulu World is presented as a passion project of his. Lululand is just a shallow ripoff that Mammon made because he already knew that the formula made money from Lucifer's passion. Mammon thus created a pageant in the same vein as American Idol and other musical performance shows in real life, where random contestants get a shot at fame for putting on great musical performances. This creates a system where Mammon is always able to have the most profitable performers, someone selected not really by him, but by the people, essentially letting them choose what kind of merchandise they want to be propagandized with. And like with how Mammon strips the greed ring for everything he can, he does the same to Fizzarolli's image. He creates cool stuffed plushes like the ones they have in real life at the Shark Robot VivziePop store, and explains that he'll make him a toy, a Saturday morning cartoon, and even a sex doll if that's what will make him profit, something that even Mammon himself pauses at for a moment when he thinks of how weird it is. Ultimately, however, Mammon decides that there's nothing weird about this if he can make money, and at this point it is something Mammon understands well. He doesn't know what will be popular with the people and thus make him money, but when something is popular, he knows that he can slap the image on everything from innocent children's entertainment to inappropriate adult entertainment, and that someone will always be there to purchase it. What Mammon focuses on isn't trying to create a sustainable business with a consistent brand, but on trying to flood the market every single time that there is something popular, so that every possible person who might be convinced to pay for something will hand their money over. While the love bots seem to be something that are very Fizz specific, I have no doubt that Mammon's polluting factories are set up to make all sorts of merchandise in massive scale for all sorts of celebrities and anything else that is popular at the time with cheap products. Mammon also has no problem putting Fizzarolli in dangerous situations to make money as well. At one point in the episode, we see a series of moments on the wall where Mammon put Fizz's life in danger for entertainment, and Mammon probably isn't that good at throwing knives despite his reputation as a clown performer. Even off stage, Mammon puts Fizz in danger, pushing him to interact with fans in a way that makes Fizz uncomfortable because of his interactions with people like Creepso. While we mostly saw Fizz have wholesome interactions, Creepso is likely just one of an endless line of haters and critics who think they can do better than Fizz or would like to use him in some way. Mammon doesn't care, however, because he wants the profits it brings and has no problem lying about it, trying to make Fizz feel like it's important for various reasons, and even when Mammon tries to act like he's checking in on Fizz to make sure he's alright, he makes it very clear that the only thing that is important is Fizz being okay enough to wow the world with yet another performance. When Fizzarolli would have eventually lost the contest or quit like he did in the recent episode, Mammon was probably ready to start making love bots for the next big star as well, such as with the fishy twins, Glitz and Glam, though for that he may need Osmodius's help, as RoboFizz said he was made at Big Ozzy's factory, and Ozzy seems to have cornered the market on adult toys, specifically with Mammon's factories, making just about everything else for hell it seems. Mammon looks like someone who doesn't take good care of himself and is meant to come off as something of a disgusting bug, and I imagine there's a lot you can say about Mammon without hurting his feelings, as the only thing he cares about is his money. In the end, the only thing that made Mammon angry was that he knew he was losing money when Fizz was walking away, and that is the most personal thing there is to him, something so big he swears revenge against Fizz and Osmodius for daring to defend him. Mammon, as the Prince of Greed, has proven he will destroy his own ring's well-being in order to profit, and when he doesn't get his profit, he will react like his loan sharks have been trained and violently go after those who have made him lose money, even if it may ultimately be worse for him in the long run. When Mammon gets angry at Fizz, he lets out his full beast mode, which is my favorite of them so far, being both creepy and gross. Mammon had a strange bug-like appearance already, but this full demon form confirms what some of the imagery had been hinting at in the background of this episode, which was full of spider webs, including some scenes of Mammon sitting directly on the spider webs. In Mammon's full beast mode, we see he has multiple legs, similar to how he already had multiple arms in his smaller form, but he doesn't just look like a spider here, and in fact becomes more disgustingly elongated at moments and worm-like. Spiders are known for luring in their victims, trapping them in a web, and then draining them, but the disgusting way that Mammon moves makes him look much more like a parasite, which is exactly what he is in hell. Mammon, like a parasite, exists to grow big and engorged, but only off of the actual work of others. Mammon siphons off as much as he can from others well beyond what he needs to survive, to the point where others are harmed or could even die. He is a parasite to society and a parasite even to the other princes, not just ripping them off like he does with Lucifer, but even getting legal protection against them and playing the victim about accusations of copyright infringement as we see in the contracts. He is a disgusting entity and one I can't wait to see more of, as his face-off between him and Asmodeus was quite epic, but there is definitely room for a real monster fight somewhere in this story's climax, and the series as a whole seems to be slowly becoming about how all the other princes need to turn against Mammon and his destructive ways. But for more theories on that, hit the subscribe button, because we have a lot more videos coming, including one specifically about Asmodeus versus Mammon that you won't want to miss, and don't forget to check out my Magical Girl Garnet Heart show. See you guys there. With all the new demons and background characters this season, let's take a look at the many different species of Hell and what we know about them. Most species seem to at least have their origins in one particular ring, so I figure we'll start at the bottom with the Ring of Sloth and work our way up to the less mysterious species that we know very well. But real quick, if you haven't seen it yet, go watch the Magical Girl Garnet Heart. It's free on YouTube. I made it with the help of some very talented animators, and Sarcastic Chorus plays a talking cat.
Let's keep things simple, you know? Rescue some cats stuck in some trees or something.
The cat's in a tree, it's because we want to be there. Leave us the fuck alone.
Yeah, that line, that does something.
We just launched a Patreon to make more episodes, or at least some short animations, so check it out and consider being among the first to donate. The very bottom ring of Hell is Sloth with its pink sky, which we of course know to be populated by the candle-headed species that most fans refer to as Baphomets. This name comes from the obvious reference to Baphomet, who has a very complex history. Baphomet is most well known today as the figure used by the Church of Satan to depict the devil. Before this, Baphomet's image was created in the mid-1800s by an occultist wanting to depict Baphomet as an entity of balance, taking inspiration for his design from different spiritual schools of thought, and using the name of the supposed deity worshipped by the Knights Templar. Some theories point to the name in the Knights Templar writings being passing references to Muhammad, and others have used special codes to reverse Baphomet's spelling in Hebrew to try and spell Sophia, Greek for wisdom, and the popular name of the fallen wisdom figure in Gnostic literature. Regardless of the origins of Baphomet, he has become a popular image for Satan and demons, and it's no surprise that there would be Baphomet influence in the Helluverse. The Baphomets are a species, however, and not a singular being like the Princes of Hell or the Ars Goetia characters, and Baphomet doesn't fall into any of the traditional demon hierarchies that we know of. Some species seem to loosely resemble their prince, such as the image of Satan on his app indicating that he has horns and red skin like the imps of the Wrath Ring, and thus the Baphomets may be a species of demon that perhaps serve Baphomet, who serves as his own royal demon title. While the Baphomets seem to be centered in the Sloth Ring, that ring is ruled by Belphegor according to the Peter Binsfield classification of demons. While Baphomet and Belphegor seem to have no connection to each other in history, some fans have speculated that the two will be one figure, while others simply think that Baphomet will be a powerful figure in Sloth and Hell in general without having to replace Belphegor. I say throughout Hell because Millie's own brother, an imp in the Wrath Ring, happens to have a tattoo of Baphomet on his arm, something I imagine he would do for a noble and perhaps countercultural demon, but not to revere the general species of Baphomets. The Sloth Ring is known for being the center of the medical industry in Hell, which mostly focuses on trying to drug their patients with pharmaceuticals. As a result, most of Hell seems to be addicted to something or other, and for the Baphomets in the Sloth Ring, that hits extra hard, with some being very clearly lethargic from extended and ongoing use while on the job. Just above the Sloth Ring is the Ring of Envy, but this one feels a lot more like what you'd think of as the bottom of Hell, at least based on what we know of it so far. Hell follows a bit of a color spectrum, with the sky in each ring being its own unique color. Red at the top in the Pride Ring, orange just below that in Wrath, then yellow for Gluttony, green for Greed, and then we start to shift into dark blue for Lust, and what looks like an even darker purple for Envy. This ring is one we haven't seen yet, but that just means it's the next new ring we get to explore somewhere down the line, though there might be a big reason they're holding it off. This ring would be ruled by Leviathan, known as a demon prince in the show, but who was known in the Bible as an ancient sea monster that God had to kill because it was too destructive to humans. Leviathan is an extension of ancient mythological traditions about a primordial sea of chaos that monsters existed within, often thought to represent the ancient ages of chaos before civilization and humanity. In recent times, Leviathan is more associated with the Lovecraftian ideas of giant monsters beyond our comprehension, primordial beings that existed before existence itself came to be. This is something the series seems to be working into its mythology, with early interviews confirming that Hell may seem Judeo-Christian, but as we've explored in comparative mythology, the terms we use for Lucifer or other demons can often be applied to a lot of different figures from different cultures. With all that in mind, fans theorize the Envy Ring will be just one giant ocean, a place where giant sea monsters like Leviathan and other deep-sea demons can exist. As far as sentient species go, there appears to be more than one. The most prominent species we've seen that fans believe to be from Envy are the deep sea fish-looking demons. Other varieties seem to have appeared, however, such as this jellyfish-looking lady. Until recently, the most we've seen of the deep sea demons came from this Karen at the hospital in the Sloth Ring, who gives the impression that the Envy Ring is largely suburbs full of entitled upper-middle-class citizens. The most recent episode, of course, had the deep sea demons Glitz and Glam, and in the audience, quite a few other deep sea demons as well. While some of the shark demons and deep sea demons may look related, the deep sea demons appear to have the power to glow in the dark like the deep sea fish species in real life. The only time we see this with the sharks of the Greed Ring are when their eyes are glowing with their strange rings, but Glitz and Glam appear to have full body glow effects going on, so I believe they are from Envy. Clowning appears to be popular with a lot of different species in Hell, so some deep-sea demons were bound to be here either way, but I think Glitz and Glam being some of the top performers might be the big motivator for why this species is seen in such large numbers in Mammon's mid-season special. While I do keep in mind that we are slowly going to be seeing more and more of these newer species in the background more often as more background characters are developed for the show to use, I like to imagine that the in-world reason we haven't seen that many of them until now is because they are a more isolated species, generally preferring to stay in the Envy Ring. I imagine this to be because if Envy is just a giant ocean, then that means the other species probably can't invade there very easily, and it provides them a community that is isolated as a whole from the issues that the rest of Hell faces. Though they of course can still travel to the other rings, it just seems more rare so far. This isolation I've theorized to give the Envy Ring citizens a sense of mystery and allure that makes people more likely to watch them on the news and social media, as we see that the Envy app very much looks like TikTok, which is popular for promoting people and their lifestyles on the internet. Because Envy appears to be nicer than the rest of Hell and can't just simply be visited, people are more likely to tune in to see what it's like there and what the people are doing there with their nicer lifestyles. Above Envy is the Lust Ring. While we don't know if there is an ocean there, we do know that there is one in Greed, and I've theorized before that the water from the Greed Ocean may leak down to the Lust Ring as rain, and then perhaps down again into the Envy Ring where the water pools in the ocean. And then of course down to Sloth again, where we do see some aesthetic floating waterfalls. Here, we have the Succubus and Incubus, which I refer to collectively as Succubus, though they're the only species so far that have distinct terms for their different genders, despite species like Imp having greater gender differences, it seems. While some rings of Hell seem to have more species overall than others, the Lust Ring appears to be exclusively the home of Succubus and Incubus as a native species, though others have migrated in, such as Imps, over the years. Their vampire bat-like appearance makes me think that they evolved as an early species to attract other demons with sexuality in order to absorb their energy, and would later be used against humans in the same way, before creating an entire economy around lust. Next up is the Greed Ring, which is home to the Loan Sharks and perhaps other species as well. The Loan Sharks appear to be just as greedy as Mammon and perhaps are working directly for him, being the elite demons of the ring who help to extract the wealth of the common citizens. While each ring seems to be home to at least one native species, there appear to have been migrations of the various species all over Hell, the most common of these being the Imps. Imps appear to have started in Wrath, as I've said, but have had various migrations into other rings that led to different subcategories of Imps developing. In some cases, this appears to be natural evolution that happens in isolation from the rest of the Imp species in other rings, leading to mostly aesthetic differences. But in Lust, the local Imp population has mixed enough with the Succubus, leading to taller, sexier Imps who have wings. In Greed, the Loan Sharks are able to financially feed off of not their own species, but off of what looks like a much larger population of Imps who seem to be the bulk of people in the Greed Ring. It is uncertain if Imps outnumber the local species of other rings, but in Greed that does appear to be the case, and it's something the Loan Sharks seem to benefit from. With there being lots of imps, they are able to do the manual labor that keeps the greed ring going, while the loan sharks simply focus on trying to extract more wealth out of them through high-interest loans. Each ring may have its own reason for imps migrating there over the years, but it's possible that Mammon was able to lure away a lot of imps from Wrath with the promise of a better lifestyle than working on the farms growing people's food, only for them to end up in gang-infested slums where they are constantly in debt. Now from here, the exact home of certain species gets a little difficult. As discussed earlier, like in the Envy Ring, some places appear to be home to more than one species, and that may be the case for Greed, but Greed may also have pulled some species in from other rings of hell. In Greed specifically, we see the shark demons and the imps, but we also see strange, other more reptile-based demons. One close-up example of this is a really cool snake-looking demon, but many fans expect this kind of demon to be from Wrath, like the imps are, since Wrath is largely a big desert wasteland where you expect to find snakes. Moxie claims to be from Wrath as that is where his mother is from, but his father is a mob boss in the Greed Ring, and with that in mind, I think it's possible that other species local to Wrath may have been recruited by Crimson for operations in the Greed Ring for one reason or another. In addition to the snake, we also see a Triceratops lady who watched Fizz and Blitz fighting in the streets of Greed. Dinosaur demons would be really cool, and I feel like they could exist anywhere, but outside of deep sea dinos in the Ring of Envy, I feel like they would mostly be seen rampaging around Wrath more than anywhere else. But, however, in addition to the Triceratops, we also see this cool, nerdy pterodactyl demon, and with them both being in the Greed Ring at the same time, it just feels like they may be from here. Sharks are basically sea dinosaurs, so I guess it would make sense that they might live in Greed near sharks, but what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments down below. Then, of course, there is the mysterious clown demons with Mammon-like colors. Clowns are popular in Hell, with Hell having a general circus theme. Clowns are most popular in Greed, it seems, with Mammon being the clown or jester among the royal demons. We first saw these strange demons in green clown attire in the background, where they had such different shapes from each other that it was hard to tell what species they were supposed to be. In recent episodes, it seems that it's different species dressing up as clowns, though the strange use of what looks like bones on the earlier designs is very odd, and makes me wonder if there were different plans for Mammon and these clowns early on. Above Greed is Gluttony, ruled over by Beelzebub and inhabited by the Hellhounds. Because Beelzebub isn't actually a hound herself, I theorize that it's possible that there are other furry-type species that perhaps exist in smaller communities in the Gluttony Ring, similar to how there seems to be an entire species of bird demons through the Goetia extended family. However, this most recent episode really reinforced that it's just a bunch of different kinds of dogs down there. For a second, I thought this dog here was a bear, but no, he really is just a big dog. Still, with the dinosaur and snake and other animal-based demons popping up, there could be lots of other species that we don't know about in small communities everywhere in Hell, so hopefully we'll see more of them. Wrath, of course, appears to be home mostly to imps, with this believed to be the original home of imps before their various migrations to other rings. The imps of this ring are known for being shorter overall, with imps as a species being more violent and having shorter lifespans on average than the other mortal species of Hell. Finally, Pride doesn't appear to be home to any species in particular, with it being where the Earthborn sinners are restricted to, so they don't overwhelm the other rings of Hell. Perhaps there was once a sentient species in the Pride Ring, but as soon as the immortal sinners started manifesting in Hell, they would have inevitably been pushed into lower rings or even into extinction. But what do you guys think? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and don't forget to check out my new show, The Magical Girl Garnet Heart.
Let's see this wonderful. She looks like I guess I'm not so wise. Okay, yeah, that's I love that edgy doing so good. Alright, that's the action.
Some girls stand for love, and some girls stand for justice. I'm the shimmering magical girl, Garnet Heart. And I'm only here because the government has convinced me to renew my contract for one more year and train the next generation of top magical girls.
Alright, Chica.
Let's see this year's squad.
A maid.
How embarrassing. I've been the top magical girl in the VIDS for 15 years. I should have girls lined up at the door for an opportunity to work under me.
Miss Garnet Heart, I know I'm not much.
Well, yeah, eyes orange.
Honored to be working
Not orange,
with you.
green.
I promise to do my best.
And your magical girl theme is just being a maid?
Isn't your magical girl theme just being a bitch?
Hey.
What the hell is that?
That's Salem. He's my assistant.
No, I'm your familiar. My job is to guide Garnet Heart as well as any other magical girls who
Oh
join
man,
me.
Salem can really talk for a while. Do I have enough Percocet to get through today?
Man, this cat's been talking for a while. I wish I'd actually watched this girl's show so I know what he's talking about.
And report back to Big Brother so they don't have to deal with her directly.
Pretty sure that's what I said.
Oh, it's nice to meet you. They call me the cleanly magical girl. Maiden Nibui.
Your name is too long for me to remember, sorry.
Don't be. You're the only one that applied.
I will just
Now
call
that
you
you're
maid.
here, I suppose we can pick a villain.
What? Already?
Yeah, what's the rush? Arcs are boring. Let's keep things simple, you know? Rescue some cats stuck in some trees or something.
The cat's in a tree, it's because we want to. Leave us the fuck alone.
I don't like his voice saying that like so much.
Then let's just put their names in a hat and pick one out tomorrow.
And I
Funny
hear it
you'd
so
say
much
that.
on Twitter.
So I already selected an arch nemesis for you.
Oh, God. Not...
Yep, and I already gave her our address.
God damn it, Salem!
Is it the one who look like Naruto's wife?
They call her the
I don't know
undead
why, I
magical
can't remember
girl.
her name right
It's
now.
Foggy Girl Miss Me.
After her.
Damn it, Salem! Why would you do this to me on a Monday?
Well, wrong to me on Monday.
Miss me? No.
Yeah, I can see the jankiness,
We had
but
a deal.
you're still doing good.
They used to say that Garnet Heart was the greatest magical girl of all time. Why is she holding back?
Sometimes magical girls can develop a special relationship with their villains. She'll fight back. Just give her a moment.
Yeah, janky, but still looking smooth as hell. So, still appreciate the work he's done. Well, he on his team. Right, Hinata, I don't remember. I think Hinata was her name, right? I don't remember. Pokemon? Pokemon? She blind. She like thing, she blind but she could still see. No fear at all.
Miss Garnet Heart.
We all she run away.
Screw you, Salem! She could have actually killed me this time!
No, let her go.
You're still here? Look, we had a deal, Miss Me. One more year, and then you can kill me.
I couldn't stop myself. I don't know why, but when I see you, I just know that I have to kill you.
Oh,
I know.
nice
Leslie.
law.
Why is that?
They killed your mother, father, sister.
Because I killed you first.
No, killed her. Well, right. I almost every animator name is Alan now, boy. Yeah, me the I don't remember her name. And Hinata. So yeah.
The Magical Girl Garnet Heart Show is an indie animated web series. If you'd like to see more episodes, head on over to Indiegogo to donate to the series, or
Yeah, I
consider
don't
sharing
have
the
the money
episode
to
wherever
do-
you
to
can. We have
donate,
lots of
sorry.
great perks for those who donate, from bonus features from episode 1 to spoilers for future episodes, and even hand-drawn art from the crew. Use the link in the pinned comment down below.
Alright. I'll go check him out, send him some love. So let's see who is up so we can raid. And then call it a day. So I'll post the schedule for this week coming by tomorrow. And that will be that. So we will raid live, playing Fortnite. Yeah, everybody play it now since they went back to OG Fortnite. Yeah, but one thing which will be good since they going back to OG Fortnite, take out turbo building, or even waking up, take out building totally again. That would be the best thing in my opinion. But on that note, whatever time zone